Chapter 191 Tentative Exploration. I leave my pets and Vibrant working on the shortcut tunnel and slowly encroach on the marsh expanse solo. It isn't that I don't think they could fight whatever it is that we find in here, it's just that I don't want to attract unwanted attention at this point. So I do something I haven't had to do for a while. I engage stealth ant mode. Luckily I'm still relatively small for a monster, so remaining unseen is still fairly simple. The plant growth is thick here, reeds and hillocks blocking line of sight in every direction. Slowly and cautiously I creep about, all of my sensing apparatus tuned to their most fine state, twitching at every shift of each tuft of grass. I'm tense. Super tense. With this stupid pressure hanging over my head and flying solo for the first time in a while, I'm really feeling the heat. It's also unnerving to be moving through this swampy terrain where there could be monsters under the water, or indeed, every plant could also be a monster. Luckily I have my heat detection for the latter. The plant monsters register much higher on that sense due to their peculiar biology than normal plant life, thus I manage to avoid most combat as I navigate around the edges of the terrain. I try not to stand on the top of the mounds that poke out of the waters lest I present my silhouette to prying eyes. I don't particularly want to have this magnificent form lighting up the eyes of every croc and murder flower in the expanse. So I get the best view I can whilst staying low. This expanse is freaking huge. Much bigger than the forest expanse, and that one already pushed my understanding of what an underground space could be. The roof is easily twice as high, and through the low-lying mist and trees I can't quite see the walls as they widen and curve away from our entrance. From what I have seen though, I would judge this place to be at least double the size of the forest. I recall that Formo told me that the radius of Pangera was around 10,000 kilometers, which would make it significantly bigger than Earth. As I recall, the radius of Earth was 6-ish thousand, so that would mean the volume of Pangera would be like way larger. By a lot. There is tons of space in here is what I'm trying to say. Apparently the expanses get even larger the lower you go. Some are truly ridiculous from what I've heard. Perhaps they would even be a similar size to some countries on Earth if we were to compare the floor area, which is crazy to think about. Still, this marsh is easily larger than I expected to find an expanse in the first layer of the dungeon. This is either hitting the jackpot or a noose around my neck. Expanses are the juicy gold mines of the dungeon from what the queen told me. Stronger monsters, more cores, mana-infused natural resources like wood and stone with properties are all features of the expanses. Great opportunity also brings with it great danger. Expanse are great points of conflict, not only between nations of the surface but between monsters down below. The big dogs all want the best territory, and from I'm feeling the crocs have moved in, and an extremely big dog croc has set up shop here. Perhaps the crocs want to monopolize the biomass being generated in this area. Maybe they aren't only sending out waves of monsters to terrorize the nearby surface but are also herding the weaker monsters straight into the belly of their parent to fuel the egg-laying process. Bizarre scenes of monsters willingly marching into the open mouth of a gigantic crocodile flit through my head. Surely not. The monsters seem unusually quiet and obedient, but surely there's no chance that they would just walk to their deaths as there. More investigation is needed, and before more investigation can happen, we need to learn more about the terrain in this expanse. The wide pools of water everywhere are really frustrating my senses. There is enough hillocks of ground that I can hop from one to the next to move around without getting my feet wet, but I can't sense any heat sources under the water, and I can't see squat through the murky surface. The result is that I'm constantly on edge as I creep about, my compound eyes giving me superb vision of my surroundings, but my mind is also focused on those deceptively placid waters. The plant-type monsters seem to be right at home here. The trees are dense, standing tall on splayed roots that plunge their thousand divided fingers into the waters, and mixed between them are more tree-like monsters, their bark exteriors concealing the hungering creature within. The branchies were a heck of a lot more friendly than these punks. I'll need to hunt down a few examples to sample the biomass, try to get a clearer picture of what we are dealing with. Some of the natural trees are absolutely enormous. At regular intervals, usually a few hundred meters from each other, these massive trees rise out of the swampy water and spread their branches impossibly wide. Huge fleshy leaves the size of a lounge room spread shade everywhere. From below I can see strange shadows shifting about through the branches and on the foliage, so I don't try to climb up at this point. I'll wait until I've managed to scope out a little more info. Ooh, here we go. Nearby I can see a vibrant flower with several dark green pods on vines hovering around the main trunk of the plant. The flower itself is beautiful, shades of yellow and orange rippling across the petals in a strangely hypnotic pattern, almost as if the colors themselves are moving. I almost feel a lull coming over me. As if. Tired. Hack. Not today. Vigorously I shake my body to cast of the lethargy that had started to wash over me due to the influence of that damn plant. This must be some kind of mind-affecting ability, perhaps caused by the pattern itself or maybe some spores in the air. Thank goodness for a high will stat. Okay. This flower is going to get it. To learn about the creatures of this expanse I must engage in true diplomacy, monster style. Which of course means killing and eating. Calling on my sub-brains I have them weave the water construct from the mana in my core. I've been practicing with this transformation shape whenever I get the chance, whipping it up and then letting it dissolve so I can whip it up again. Practice makes perfect as they say, and the time it takes to form it has been going down steadily. There's still a long time to go before I reach what I would consider mastery, but I'm satisfied with my current progress. Before long a bright and shiny new construct is glimmering inside my head and my brains get to work operating it, feeding in the raw mana in one end and producing the glittering blue energy out the other side. I don't think water mana is going to be super effective against this plant, but since I'm practicing it I need to keep using it in order to become familiar with its uses. Mana transformation has reached level 3. Haha. There we go. Practicing the transformation magic is definitely reaping the benefits of experience at least. Particularly when I've been using it in combat. Alright flower. Time to get hosed. Chapter 192 Battling the Marsh. Deftly I use my sub-brains to weave together 2 water bolts, leaving one brain to maintain and operate the transformation construct, as I lie patiently in wait like the great hunter that I am. The flower has no way to detect me with my advanced stealth active and my positioning being on point. Water magic affinity has reached level 2. Nice. I need to keep practicing these spells in order to raise my proficiency as quickly as possible. The power of my current evolution is all in my capacity to utilize magic, so I have to grind these skill until I can fling my spells about with practiced ease. Gradually the bolts take shape and I take careful aim before unleashing them all at once. Pow! Pow! 2 tear-shaped orbs of water zoom through the air and smash into the flower, hitting the stem and the center of the petals directly. The impacts cannon into the plant-type monster and it rocks back and forth on its stem, reeling from the sheer force of the strike. If I had imagined before that using water magic on a plant was like giving it a gentle sprinkling, I have been convinced with this attack. It's more like hurling a block of concrete at it. Unlike fire, which causes damage by burning, or electricity which zaps organism whilst also burning them, water doesn't seem to have any inherently harmful properties. It's important to remember though that when water is accelerated to sufficient speeds it becomes harder, more difficult to break up. Rather than thinking of the water bolt as throwing a ball of water, it's more like throwing a ball of metal. The sheer kinetic force is what does the damage rather than any particular property of the mana. Having been smashed with 3 water bolts, the flower is reeling, its vines desperately flailing about as it attempts to seek out the source of that vicious strike. The fun has only begun, flower. I've got 2 more bolts on the way right now. Pow! Pow! Crash! Once again the 2 bolts collide with tremendous force, both of them smack against the stem of the flower this time. The impact are nearly simultaneous and the flower is knocked straight to the ground. The fibers of the stem are starting to tear and split where the bolts have struck it. If I were to keep attacking that spot, the stem may simply snap, killing the monster directly. I almost feel bad for it. This is a rough way to fight. It's like I'm bludgeoning the thing to death by hurling rocks at it. However, the flower seems to have gotten a bead on my location from the last strike. As it rights itself with difficulty, the 4 pods surrounding the central flower swivel towards my direction and open, revealing a bizarre, mouth-like arrangement on the inside. Just as I'm wondering what the heck is going to happen, the mouths open wide and shriek. Youch! Super high-pitched, almost inaudible sound waves batter against my ears from all 4 of the pods. It's a sonic attack. From a damn plant. The sound tunnels straight through my ears and begins to rattle my brain. I can feel a wooziness begin to rise in me as the persistent sound waves try to stun my mind into rest. Having unleashed its sonic screech, the main body of the flower rights itself with difficulty and presents its full glorious petal arrangement towards me. It immediately begins to employ that strangely hypnotic rippling technique, but more potent as the flower puts all of its effort towards lulling my mind. Across the ground small vines are creeping towards me, hoping to seize the stunned and mesmerized prey and drag it towards the flower for consumption. In your dreams, petal face. Pow! Pow! Using my strong will, I'm able to resist even Tiny's ear-shattering scream, as if some dumb flower could hope to match that volume or potency. As for the petal dance, if I know it's coming I can steel myself against it long enough to form a few more water bolts. The two bolts smash into the flower right on the stem and shatter the plant fibers there completely, breaking the stem and toppling the flower onto the ground. Take that. You have slain level 14 Fascinatio folium flows. You have gained experience. Ha! Defeating a plant with water is an odd feeling. Too bad for this flower that my strengths matched up very well against its own. With my potent mental defenses, it isn't easy to hypnotize me. Tiny might be caught handily, but not this ant. Keeping low and trying not to attract any more attention than I need to, I creep over and start eating the flower, keeping an eye on my surroundings as I do. You have consumed a new source of biomass. Fascinatio folium flows. You are awarded 1 biomass. Basic profile of the Fascinatio folium flows unlocked. Fascinatio folium flows, bewitching petal flower. This plant-type monster uses a combination of powerful mental attacks to lull its opponent into a stupor, allowing it to use its relatively weak physical body to consume the prey. This monster is weak defensively and can be overcome with surprise, but be careful of its sonic scream. Yeah, no doubt. Why are these profiles so full of information that would be immensely useful if known before fighting the creature but only be gained afterwards? I gain another 3 biomass from the plant before moving on to continue my exploration. I have 13 points of biomass now, so it'll be worth stopping to mutate something when I get a chance. I continue to poke about here and there, engaging the odd plant monster in combat to learn about their tendencies and practice my water magic skills. I end up gaining another level in water magic affinity and 5 more biomass before I retreat from the marsh. More and more potent Croca beast variants are appearing nearby, so I decide to get out of dodge and regroup with my gang, still hard at work on the tunnel shortcut. How are we, folks? Enjoying the wonderful process of tunnel digging? I greet them. Opening square bracket ... closing square bracket. Yes, master. Nothing from Tiny and somewhat reluctant reply from Chrysalis. Yup. Having a great time, senior. A very enthusiastic response from Vibrant. Right. Digging is the best. For sure. I just love the feel of dirt in my mandibles. Truly, only ant kind can fully appreciate the joy of tunnel digging. My own people understand me best. As I return to digging, I decide to spend the biomass I've accrued. The marsh is dangerous and I can't afford to hold off on building up any advantage that I can. Firstly, I decide to spend 14 biomass upgrading my coordination cortex to +5 so I can choose a mutation advancement. I'm reliant on my magic for offense in a way I haven't been before, so I want to get every edge I can in this department. Once again, the menu appears in my mind with a plethora of juicy options to select from. Let me see. Ooh, there's a lot here as usual. I can give my cortex an affinity to boost the efficiency when using a specific mana type. I rule that option out of hand. General strength is the name of the game. What else have we got? I take my time to browse as my body stays busy shoveling dirt with my mandibles, and eventually I settle on 2 fairly normal but in my opinion excellent choices. Harnessed coordination cortex. Improves efficiency when the cortex is coordinating multiple brains to work on a single task. Divergent coordination cortex. Improves efficiency when the cortex is coordinating multiple brains to work on individual tasks. So do I want the brains to be more powerful when they are working together or when they are doing their own thing? Of course, there is always the option of coming back to the other upgrade at +10, so it's possible I could eventually choose both, but which do I want right now? Using both sub-brains to work together on one big job is handy for sure, and something that could surely be useful to have boosted. On the other hand, letting each brain cast its own spell is also great and makes my attacking options a lot more open. I'll go for the divergent. There is still the possibility in the future that I'll be able to include more sub-brains and hook them up to the cortex, so having each of them be more capable on their own will give me a better result, I think. Do you wish to confirm this selection? This will cost 14 biomass. Go for it. Snatchiflatch. Ma brains. They itchhhhhhhhh. Chapter 193, The Next Wave. It takes a while for the vicious itch to fade. The coordination cortex is like an octopus that sits between my sub-brains and the main mind, so as it mutates and changes, my entire brain zone lights up with itching. It's intolerable. But finally gone. The process finishes and I find my pet monsters looking at me funny. Look, just because you lot can take the sensation of mutating like it's nothing doesn't mean I can. I'm sensitive. Maybe. At any rate, keep digging. It takes only a few hours of vigorous work to finally connect the new section of the shortcut to the old, meaning the travel time from the surface down to the marsh will be as short as an hour if there aren't monsters spawning in there, or an hour and a half if there are. It's a crude tunnel that zigzags back and forth on a fairly steep grade, barely large enough to squeeze Tiny through. When he evolves again, we are going to have to put in a lot of work expanding all of these passages for the big lug. To celebrate this momentous achievement, I've decided that we'll all pitch in and collect a feast for ourselves and then another feast that we can take up to the Queen. I place Chrysalis on defense duty at the shortcut entrance to make sure nothing sneaks out of the expanse, and then Tiny, Vibrant and myself start roaming the tunnels looking for biomass. Chrysalis isn't really built to be an offensive hunter, at least not yet, so placing her in position where she can deploy her tentacles thinly like a spider's web to detect intruders and snatch them up is the best use of her talents. Tiny and I are more than capable of dealing with the monsters that spawn out of the walls here. Sadly, we don't find many. Since the monsters are drawn by that mysterious pressure to run into the marsh expanse upon spawning, they can't build their numbers and get caught up fighting each other in the tunnels. Aside from a few stragglers and slow-moving plant types, the pickings are pretty darn slim. Master, return to my location. I think something is happening. Chrysalis suddenly speaks in my mind. We are on the way, Chrysalis. What's going on? I mean, something could be happening, but how the heck would she know? If a fireworks display was going on around her, she'd have no idea. I can feel vibrations in the tunnel floor, and they keep getting stronger. I think something is approaching, she explains. Oh, makes a lot of sense, really. She does have quite a responsive sense of touch. She kind of has to, since it's the only sense that she has. She'll have to wait until evolution before she'll be able to take advantage to some of the changes I made to her core. With Vibrant resting on my head and Tiny lumbering behind, we make our way back at full speed to the entrance of our shortcut tunnel where Chrysalis had been posted on guard duty. Just in time too. Although Chrysalis was unable to tell what was causing the vibrations, I could see perfectly well what was happening. Another horde of monsters was piling out of the marsh expanse and into the tunnel, hurtling in our direction as quickly as their beastly limbs could carry them. It's another mob of monsters, guys. Action stations. Prepare to dive. Chrysalis, engage feast mode. I holler frantically at my group. The horde is nearly upon us, only a few meters away at this point, but Chrysalis wastes no time. Immediately she retracts the thin sensing tendrils she had laid out and reforms her tentacles into the thick, monster-crushing engines of destruction we need them to be. Her main body swells up to its full beach ball size, splitting open to reveal her hungering maw. Tiny is no slower to prepare for action. In his case, he simply pushes past me and flings himself at the crowd of monsters, howling with glee. He doesn't say much, but I get the feeling the big guy has not enjoyed feeling so subdued by the pressure emanating from the center of the expanse. He's not the kind of monster who wants to shy away from a fight. He wants to get in there and punch faces, especially with strong enemies. The feeling of being reluctant to run forward and challenge something has been a strange new sensation for this normally suicidal ape. I'd welcome the change. Personally, I think not wanting to fling yourself at some mysterious boss monster is just downright sensible, but Tiny isn't built that way. Now he has a chance to work his frustrations out on a massive horde of foes, and he is going to take it. Before the charging mass of monsters has even reached Chrysalis, Tiny bowls into them with his formidable mass, sending monsters flying, slamming into the walls and ceiling. Chrysalis, move towards the expanse and engage. Tiny ran past you to fight, so you need to shift up the tunnel. Oh, understood, master. Hearing my orders, Chrysalis uses her tentacles to propel herself forward, and soon those grasping limbs come into contact with the edges of the horde that are already starting to wrap around Tiny and attack his vulnerable back. Those monsters rather suddenly find themselves wrapped up themselves as their bodies are rent by Chrysalis and then tossed into the limitless darkness of her maw. Just a reminder not to eat them all, Chrysalis. We need enough for all of us and the Queen, I decide to say. Sorry, master. I forgot myself. She stammers. I mean, it's fine to eat. Just don't go nuts, I relent. Okay. It shouldn't need to be said, but boy can she eat a lot. I wish I had that stomach. I kind of dismissed all stomach upgrades in the evolution menu out of hand, but I'm really starting to see the value in them. If I can hold more food or process it more efficiently, then my biomass deficiency should be taken care of, or at least alleviated somewhat. Something to consider for next time. Right now I need to deal with these monsters. With Tiny smashing his way through fists first, lightning sparking off him in increasingly intense waves, and Chrysalis starting to wind up her threshing machine, I decide to hang back and offer support. I still have my water mana transformation construct active, so I start feeding it double time and weaving together a spell. The water cannon. With my potent main mind on the job, it doesn't take long to get it up and running, and suddenly a massive torrent of water blasts out from just above my head, cannoning into the monsters on Tiny's left and knocking them off their feet. Ha ha. Time for some crowd control. I scuttle up the wall and move closer to unleash the full fury of my water cannon on the densely packed monsters. The sheer pressure of the water smacking into the monsters doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it sure knocks them around a lot. From up here I can fire upon the monsters just in front of Tiny without hitting the big lug, so I sweep the spell across the crowd, sending monsters flying into their neighbors from the impact. Gwei. With my assistance keeping the enemies from swarming him, Tiny is able to unleash his strength to the fullest, lashing out with massive sweeps of his gigantic fists and pulverizing monsters with every swing. At one point he unleashes a furious uppercut that slams a monster straight into the roof. Holy heck. Not willing to be outdone, I flip control of my hose over to a sub-brain and task the other with maintaining and feeding the construct so I can concentrate on more spells. First thing I do is form a few gravity spears and throw them into the pack at various points to further destabilize the monsters, making life easier for my two pets. I also realize something rather nasty about that particular technique, as several monsters are caught in the overlap between spear effects and find themselves being pulled hard in opposite directions. It wasn't pretty. I mean, the force wasn't enough to pull the monsters directly in half or anything, but they sure didn't look like they enjoyed the experience. I could probably form a gravity bomb and lob it into the thick of the pack. The monsters are still streaming out of the expanse and packing the tunnel. I'll be shocked if there isn't another 1,000 of them, but I want to keep as much biomass as possible. This is a gift racing straight into our stomachs, and I refuse to let it go. At this point another curious synergy is becoming apparent. Tiny's fists are completely sparking with electricity by this point, and his body is starting to zap nearby monsters, such as the charge he's built up. Due to my excellent deployment of my super soaker, the monsters around him are also drenched in water. Zap, zap, zap. Electricity begins to arc and crackle throughout the saturated monsters with every swing of Tiny's fists. The electricity discharging into the monsters' bodies and then leaping to the next. With every swing of his fists, Tiny is damaging 5 or 6 monsters, and he starts to cut them down even faster than before. Nice. Maintain that hose. I'd like to say I planned this, but I really didn't. If anyone asks me though, I'll smile mysteriously and act smug. Gwei. My feet are continuing to soak up mana from the floor at a furious rate, feeding my core, which in turn continues to feed the water mana. Finally, this upgrade is able to show its true might. Chapter 194, A Tasty Fees. After continuing to hose down the foes and let Tiny's fists smack them with electricity, the idea finally occurs to me to widen the damage out even further. I take over the hose with my main mind and start spraying as wide a field of monsters as possible. It doesn't matter if I knock them down, it only matters if they get soaked. Chrysalis, move forward and support Tiny for a minute. Yes, master. My faithful death blob wriggles a little closer to her fellow pet and extends her tentacles around his sides to snatch up and smash the monsters who try and swarm around the giant ape, whilst my hose is no longer providing the same level of crowd control. It takes me a little while to thoroughly drench the monsters in the tunnel, and I can't quite reach the ones at the back as they pile in from the marsh expanse. It'll have to do. Chrysalis, back off again, and Tiny, you unleash your lightning. Chrysalis responds quickly and retracts her tentacles as I turn the water cannon back onto the monsters surrounding Tiny, whilst the ape keeps swinging his fists. Tiny, shoot the lightning. Opening square bracket ... question mark closing square bracket. The lightning. Shoot the lightning from your hands. Opening square bracket ... ARRRGGGH. You dumb ape. Not like this, the one where you shoot the electricity in a big bolt. You've done it before. Opening square bracket ... When? I swear I'll use core surgery to give you a brain again, think, damn it. As if feeling my animosity drilling into the back of his head, Tiny pauses for a moment before responding to me. Oh, like this. A huge amount of electricity bursts out of his body and crackles across his fur in jagged arcs that flood towards his right hand. As the charge builds up, the hand glows brighter and brighter, dozens of electric bolts sparking off it every second. With a roar, Tiny thrusts the hand forward, and bright arc of electricity blasts out of his hand and covers the saturated monsters in electrical energy, frying them instantly. The entire tunnel lights up as Tiny passes his hand across the crowd of monsters, controlling the arcing bolt of electrical energy and letting every monster have a taste. The ape's body continues to release unbelievable amounts of energy that slithers down his arm like countless electric snakes before blasting out of his hand. Sensational. That's the one, Tiny. Good stuff. I praise him. At my words, Chrysalis retracts her tentacles even further and shrinks a little. Is she sulking? Surely not. Chrysalis, you'll need to step up in a moment. Tiny can't maintain it much longer. Okay, she responds, sounding full of life. Must have been my imagination. The monsters that had been exposed to my watery torrent of death have long been fried, and the fresh ones from behind are pressing forward blindly, packing into the tunnel. Tiny has been able to maintain his lightning arc for a good 30 seconds before it suddenly fizzles out and he runs out of juice. Back up, Tiny, and catch your breath. Let Chrysalis past you. Reluctantly, the ape acquiesces to my orders and falls back, allowing Chrysalis to slither past him to the front line where she can fully display her talents in reaping the chaff. Tiny would happily continue fighting, but he can't refuse my order. He would win, of that I've no doubt, but I don't to see the big guy getting hurt for no reason. I'm too soft. Sorry, Tiny. Perhaps one day you'll be able to indulge your suicidal impulses and punch your way into an early grave, but it isn't this day. With an almost tangible feeling of delight, Chrysalis has returned to her crunching best, and tentacles fly in all directions, knocking down monsters, grabbing others and shredding them before flinging them into the walls or into packs of monsters, scattering them like bowling pins. Tiny is reduced to supporting, smashing down monsters that try and surround Chrysalis or break past her to run deeper into the tunnel. In the interest of training my water magic further, I once again pass the water cannon to my sub-brains and use my main mind to throw down some water bolts to train faster. My efforts are rewarded before the end of the battle by the soothing tones of Gandalf ringing in my mind. Mana transformation has reached level 4. Water mana affinity has reached level 4. Yas. This what I wanted to hear. I do notice that using the mana transformation to power 2 spells at once, particularly a consistently draining one like the water cannon, is really putting a strain on the system. Especially so when I'm using one sub-brain to hold the construct in place as well as feed the mana into it. My sub-brains are proving to be massively capable, and they've increased my spell casting flexibility to a huge degree. However, I'm still finding that more sub-brains may be necessary in the future. I mean, I've got the coordination cortex already. The more brains I plug into it, the better efficiency I'll get. I'll shelve this for future consideration. It takes another 10 minutes to finish off the monster horde, and I manage to snag 2 levels by ditching water bolts on monsters from above and then charging in to mob up the dregs with my mandibles. I must have been close to level 4 already, but grabbing another 2 levels is certainly nice. More skill points in the bank for my upcoming spending spree. Once we are done, we stand in the wreckage of nearly 1,000 monsters, so many that they are clogging up the tunnel nearly to the roof in places. This is madness. What are all these newly born monsters doing? If they're following orders for some reason, what is that purpose? Why am I thinking about this when I could be eating instead? Nom nom. The 4 of us chow down to the limits of our respective stomachs. I myself manage to crunch in and fill every stomach to bursting, netting myself 15 points of biomass. I really do need to investigate this stomach situation, because Chrysalis must have gotten double what I did if the disappearing act she pulled on that food was anything to go by. The worst part is that once she's finished, she once again attempts to break my back, by shrinking herself down and taking her customary position. Gah, I need to work on my legs. After resting briefly, we start hauling the food up the shortcut to the surface. We can't take it all between the 4 of us, but over a few hours we make a number of trips and manage to pile up a respectable haul that I mark with pheromones before we tread our weary way back to the nest. I'll need to check in with the humans at some point. Before then, I'm going to check in on the queen. I'm interested to see if Mother has been properly upgrading herself or stocking up on biomass to lay eggs. Chapter 195 Surface Situation. The queen was in her chamber much the same as she had been over a day ago, covered in workers and resting peacefully. She hasn't had any reason to go out and fight lately, so I hope she's enjoying a period of relaxation. Considering the measly supply of biomass that the workers have been extracting from the surface, there hasn't even been much laying to do. I'm not sure if Queen Ants can get bored, but perhaps she might be feeling that things have become a little dull. Bored, she responds when I ask her, sounding for all the world like she didn't even understand the word. Why would I be bored? Well, there isn't much to do at the moment. Foolish child, she chides me. The colony is not under threat and you have provided food and a great hope for our family. I am content, as we should all be. How is this giant ant monster always so positive? Such a good mother. Before I can get too emotional, I need to focus on the present. So you've received the biomass we sent up? Yes. The children have been working as hard as they can. They found it and brought it to me. Awesome. I stare hard at the queen for a moment, trying to judge whether she's upgraded herself as we discussed. Rather than accuse my own mother of lying, which would be rather tactless, I try a different angle. Is it okay if I check on your core? There may be more that I can do to improve our chances. Of course, child. She answers without hesitation. I seriously doubt that she's even capable of doubting her own children. I wonder if all the ant queens are like this. Bringing my antennae forward, I activate the core surgery skill and spin my mind up into overdrive to handle the flood of information that nearly knocks me off my 6 feet. Okay, here we go then. This is the bit I'm looking for. Trying to arrange all of the details in my mind, I find the information I want and check in on the queen's mutation advancements. Oh ho, I would not have been surprised if she had neglected my advice in order to produce more young. I believe that she considers producing young as her primary responsibility and the best way to serve the family as a whole, so it's only natural that she would prioritize it over everything else, but in a pleasant shock she has constrained herself. In front of me I can plainly see the upgrades to the 3 egg production organs that she has selected. Efficient biomass deconstruction organ +5 increases the efficiency of the organ to produce more deconstructed biomass per point of biomass spent. Smooth biomass recoding gland +5, the recoding process utilizes less deconstructed mass to encode the same material, increasing efficiency. Boosting egg production gland +5 gives a bonus +2 to all stats for each egg produced. Fantastic. The first 2 upgrades were exactly the sort of thing I spoke to the queen about. After studying the organs carefully, I estimate that these 2 advancements will synergize together to boost the egg production by 10%. Possibly more. That might not sound like much, but it isn't, as if the queen will be producing 10 eggs per year once the colony gets rolling. My dream scenario would have the queen producing about 1 million ants a year, so an extra 10% would represent an increase of 100,000 workers. Not a small number at all. The thing that really grabs my attention is the +2 to all stats in the egg production gland. +2 might not seem like much, but it's enough to make my mind boggle. That's a huge deal. The ants will be so weak that +2 to their physical stats is going to be significant enough, but +2 to the mental stats is fantastic. If we were to think of the croca beasts and how much biomass would be needed to create one as opposed to a hatchling worker, I would guess that for each croca beast that was hatched would be able to make 8 worker ants, perhaps more. An extra 2 stats on 1 croca won't make that much difference, but for 8 workers, the difference is huge. In fact, I can make use of this. Knowing that every worker is going to be getting this boost from the queen, I make a few minor adjustments, bending my mind to its limits to enforce them. I trim down on the workers a little, basically shaving 1 point from each stat and giving clear paths for the bonus stats to slide into. The end result of this trade-off is that the ants will be produced more cheaply than before, but still be a little stronger in the end. Win-win. However, there is a chance we can go further. Withdrawing my mind from the queen's core, I immediately congratulate her on the wise choices she made. Those mutation advancements are fantastic. The 2 efficiency upgrades will mean more workers, and the +2 to all stats was perfect. Great job. Thank you, child. The queen sounds genuinely pleased to be praised in this way. Are we ready to lay the first generation of new workers? How many are needed? 200. 400. Whoa there. Hold on a second. 400. I can tell the queen is pumped up to get back to growing the colony, and the promises I've made about the next generation are clearly exciting for her, but she needs to hold on to them horses for a bit longer. No way. Not yet. I say firmly. What? Why? I can tell she is genuinely disappointed. Sorry, mother. First of all, we are going to get that egg production gland to +10 for sure. If it's possible to get another +2 to all stats to stack with the existing advancement, that will absolutely insane. Game breaking even. I'm not kidding. +10 for the egg laying is a must. The queen is silent for a moment. I can almost feel her sadness. It's okay. It won't take long. We brought up a huge feast from below. It'll surely get you to +10. I'll make sure the workers bring every bit of it here for you, okay? I say desperately. Thank you, child, she says gratefully. As for the first generation, I continue. Relieved her mood has improved. My suggestion is that we keep it small. Only 20 workers. So few. I haven't laid a clutch of eggs that small since the first. Is that really all right? Absolutely. These workers will be completely different than the ones in the past. I'll have to teach them a few things and bring them up carefully. Once they hatch, I'll start teaching them, and you can save up on biomass. When they're ready, you can lay the second generation of 400, and the workers I've trained will be able to take care of them. See, I understand. I'll be patient. Thanks, mother. I chat to the queen a little longer before sending my crew down below into our little chamber and making my way back to the surface to make good on my promise. I personally lead the workers to the food cache and instruct them carefully before supervising them transport the massive load of food directly to the queen's chamber for her to feast on. If that organ can be doubled up to +4, things are going to get crazy. Filled with hope for the new workers, I wander over the human area and see what the pests have been up to whilst I was below. As I approach, I can see they've erected a few crude shelters and unpacked most of their stuff. Someone took the time to use some fallen branches to put up a picket line for the beasts of burden as well. As I draw closer, I observe the people a little more carefully. It doesn't take long before something strikes me as a little odd. Why are these homeless refugees looking so chipper? It's true. Where I expected to find weeping, gnashing teeth and fists being shaken at the sky, there appears instead calm people, many smiling and joking with others as they go about their labors. Odd. Also, aren't there more of them? Chapter 196, Humans and Their Needs. Once I get close enough, I'm quickly recognized by the people, and the reaction is unlike what I expected. Firstly, the humans seem unusually comfortable with having a monster ant wandering up to their area. I guess they've seen plenty of ants wandering here and there over the last few days. Secondly, they seem a bit reverential. When they recognize me, I look different enough from the other workers, I suppose. They fall quiet and still. There are hushed whispers and people rushing off towards the rear of the settlement where the shelter is. Other people are gesturing in my direction and talking animatedly to the people next to them. Even the children are pointing and whispering. ... Annoying. So annoying. What are these people doing anyways? I wait impatiently on the edge of the settlement, not willing to wander in and subject myself to more pointing. After a few moments, Enid and the white-robed priest Bane came rushing over. She looks a bit nervous, but he appears positively beaming with joy. Hastily I weave together a mind magic transformation construct and connect to Enid whilst she patiently waits for me to complete the magic. Enid, have your people managed to stay within their bounds? I say abruptly once the mind bridge is finished. Yes. We've been staying within the boundary you set very carefully, she says nervously. It appears to be true. When I detect the pheromone trail on this side of the settlement with my antennae, it does seem to be fine. I'll check the other side before I leave as well. There seems to be more people today. I ask dubiously. More refugees from Lyria. It appears the monster horde is moving further south. These people arrive only this morning and we herded them in here as quickly as we could so that they weren't eaten. Right. So what are you people going to do? I ask. More to the point, how long are they going to stay? We have nowhere to go. Most of us are content, surprisingly content, to remain here and build a temporary shelter. Wait for the wave to pass and then hopefully return to our homes. I brighten up immediately. So you don't want to stay forever. Head back after the wave is sorted out. Sounds good. Wait, how long is the wave going to go for? Well, as long as it isn't permanent, it should be fine. There are a few things we would like ask, Enid asks hesitantly. As you know, we came with very little and have made do with what we have. We have access to the stream for water, but food is scarce and shelter is hard to come by. It isn't too cold right now, but it will start to cool soon. Weather. Honestly, I don't even notice anymore. I do spend most of my time underground, to be fair. So, you want me to remove the restrictions on movement? This land isn't tame by any stretch. The colony is chewing through a lot of the local beasts on the surface, but there isn't any guarantee you won't come across monsters around here. Other than us, I mean. She nods. We're aware of that, but we need to do this or we'll perish. We have to forage for food, perhaps try to clear a field that we can sow in the spring. The people here are feeling positive about their prospects of living safely here. They have hope again and they want to do something positive for themselves. She's quite persuasive when she puts her mind to it. Since this area is untamed, uncultivated wildlands, there are woods everywhere, plenty of places to go foraging. If they want to clear a field though, that's going to be a heck of a lot of effort. There's ready access to water from a nearby stream which will help with irrigation. I may as well help them out a little. If they get off to a good start, they'll have less reason to come and whinge at me later. Enid, I'll help by cutting some trees and bringing the logs to the edge of your settlement, and I'll start work on the stumps to help get your field started. Tell your people they can start foraging but not to come closer to the anthill. I'll mark a new boundary halfway between here and there, and I recommend you make sure your people don't cross it, I warn her. Her expression brightens immediately. Thank you so much. This will mean the world to these people. Wait till I tell Bane. She turns and starts talking rapidly to the priest next to her. As soon as she's finished, tears begin to flood down his face and he kneels in the dirt before me, raising his one good arm to the sky and shouting with praise. I'm starting to regret this already. When the other villagers hear his words of thanks, they all beam with joy and many bow or wave in my direction, some go as far as to kneel along with their priest. I'm getting out of here. I'll be back to check in after 2 more days, Enid. Try to keep your people in line. I will. Thank you. Sheesh. I flee rapidly from the effusive praise and get to work checking on the old boundary as I circle around in a race. It appears as though Enid was telling the truth after all. With that job done, I call Tiny up to help me and leave Chrysalis on defense duty under the Queen's chamber before marking out the new boundary in a straight line roughly 2 kilometers long between the settlement and the nest. With Tiny helping, it's fairly easy to clear out trees. After surveying a little, we choose an area 100 meters from the stream and several hundred from the settlement. Using my infused savage mandibles, I cut the trees close to the ground and Tiny carries them over his huge shoulder back to the humans before dumping them on the ground. Once we've hauled a few trees over, I get digging and Tiny helps me lever out the stumps, leaving behind deep holes in the ground that the humans will need to deal with. After a day's work, we manage to clear almost 50 trees and the human camp is a hive of activity. As we skirt the edges on our way back to the nest, the people are bustling everywhere, talking back and forth, hauling the logs about and readying the tools that they have on hand. Looks like they'll be busy enough with that for some time. So long as they don't come and bother me, it's worth it. We've got serious business to be about back at the nest. Preparations need to be made and the dungeon below needs more exploring. Not to mention the intense food packing program we need to undertake for the Queen to start mass producing the new generation after the first are born. When I get back to the nest, I high-five the workers I pass on the way in and send Tiny down to our little guard post under the Queen's chamber and summon Chrysalis to help me. I need to dig out some farms. With Chrysalis helping to relocate the dirt, I create 2 large empty chambers accessible only by a narrow tunnel on either side of our guard spot. I get Chrysalis to haul the dirt back to Tiny and let the ape carry big handfuls into the Queen's chamber, where the workers get annoyed and take it to the top, dumping it on top of the hill. Once the mana veins extend into those chambers, we'll be able to begin harvesting biomass from right here near home, if not quite as much as we were before due to the longer gestation time the monsters are experiencing right now. With that done, time to nap. Chapter 197, Improve Thyself. www.wacha. I'm up. Snapping alert. After my nap, I immediately leap into more work. Got stuff to do. No point slacking off like a dumb croc. Yeah, I said it. First thing on the menu is expanding the farm chambers. I originally thought that 2 would be fine, but now I'm not so sure. I need to be more ambitious if I want to grow the colony to the sort of size it needs to be in order to support itself in a never-ending expansion of the glorious ant empire. Everyone wants what's best for their family, right? I'm no different. What's best for the colony is obviously dungeon domination. This is the conclusion I've come to. To that end, I make the existing 2 chambers larger and dig out another 2 the same size, relying on my pets and the workers to deal with the dirt issue. The first 2 chambers have already begun to incubate monsters. I can detect their heat easily. I'm not worried about the monsters taking over the nest either. There is literally 200 workers and the Queen chilling just above where these farm chambers are. The odds of them overflowing with enough numbers to take out the colony are basically non-existent. Not to mention the farm chambers connect through narrow passages to my resting place, where Chrysalis and Tiny will be on guard duty anytime we aren't away from the nest. The digging also pays off with a level, taking my excavation to level 8. Every extra level increases my digging efficiency that little bit more, and I can't help but be happy to see that happening. After all, digging is the way of Ant Zen. Refreshed from my labors, I prepare myself for the next task I've set myself for the day. This is one I'm not really looking forward to. I feel nervous about what we experienced in the marsh expanse, that formless pressure, those waves of monsters. We can handle the waves okay for now, but what if they get larger? What if more powerful monsters come? I'm getting worried that my current rate of growth isn't enough. Even without laying eyes on the beast in the marsh, I'm certain it's going to be a tough cookie to crunch. I'm feeling some anxiety. There isn't any real direct threat to my family right now, but if something were to happen and I couldn't save them, I refuse to let that happen. I lost my family in the last world, but I refuse to let it happen in this one too. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this family stays together. With a surging feeling of determination, I unearth my core collection and begin fusing together a special core. I'm so focused that the mental strain barely registers in my conscious. All that occupies my mind is visions of workers marching themselves down the gullet of a brutal crocodile beast the size of a house. Compatible special core detected. Would you like to reinforce your core or reconstitute the monster? Reinforce. The painfully familiar process begins once more as the oversized core gradually dissipates into pure energy that is drawn into my own core, enlarging and condensing it within my body. It doesn't take long for the pinch to come, the awkward feeling of being a little too full on the inside that grows more unbearable over time until it becomes an acute pain. I will endure. This isn't enough. Not nearly enough. I grit my mandibles and hold on until the entire process is finished. It feels not good, but I can take it. For the colony, I can take it. Painfully but not less determined than before I move out to take on my next task. Hopefully over time I'll be able to become accustomed to this size core and the pain will fade much like it did the first time I took in a special core early. Then I'll see about what else I can do. For now, I wander over to the Queen's chamber and check in with her. It turns out, the masses of food we sent up had in fact been enough to tip her over the edge and allow her to upgrade her egg-laying organ to +10. Eagerly I activate the core surgery skill and inspect her choices. Ready to behold the future of the ant race on Pangera. And it is beautiful. Enhanced boosting egg production gland +10, gives a bonus +4 to all stats for each egg produced. It's really here. I immediately retract the skill and perform an excited six-legged tap dance in front of the bewildered queen. Yahoo! I cheer. You seem happy, child. The queen laughs. I refuse to stop the dance. This music must be expressed. This is going to make all the difference, mother. I cry whilst my feet keep tippity tapping. The next generation are going to be something very special, just you wait. I have already begun to stockpile biomass. When I have enough for the first 20 I'll let you know, the queen assures me. Fantastic. If I get a chance I'll head down into the dungeon and try to rustle up some grub. The sooner we can get this rolling the better. The queen seems quite pleased by my enthusiasm even if she has no idea how to take my celebratory dance. I swear I saw her shuffle her own feet a little before growing still once more. I don't want to make any more changes to the new generation, they'll be fine the way they are. With all the upgrades in place the egg production will be quicker and produce more powerful hatchlings than I had originally planned for. Everything is coming up biomass. Full of enthusiasm I waddle my way back down into my chamber and settle in for a little bit of planning. There are a few things I want to look into before we move out again. The challenges are getting a little real right now and I want to make sure that we are in tip-top fighting shape, myself and my pets. For me, this means a little skill point spending. For my pets, it means a little core surgery so I can take a look at their skills and mutations. I need to be able to better understand what I'm dealing with. There is a skill that allows me to directly take a look at their status, but since I can use core surgery I don't really think it's necessary. I mean, I could just ask them for the information and I'm sure Chrysalis would be happy to provide it, but Tiny. Well, he has communication issues. If he gets any dumber I'm going to have to shift some energy into beefing up his brain. I'm almost afraid to look at how low his cunning has gotten. Chapter 198 Quick Status Report. Chrysalis, could you come over here please? Of course master, the tennis ball of endless darkness responded immediately. I get the feeling that she's able to sense where I am since she manages to roll towards me despite having no sense of sight. Once she reaches a space just in front of me she unfolds a few tentacles and stands up, holding her body up on a few slender tendril-like limbs. How are things going, Chrysalis? I decide to lead with a general question. Well, master, she replies happily. Since maturing I've been able to gain levels and biomass at an accelerated pace. It feels good to be useful to you, master. Yep, you've been a great help. The little ball wiggles happily in front of me for being praised. Despite her image she really is quite weak to positive reinforcement. How have you found spending your skill points and biomass, Chrysalis? Has there been any issues? Do you need any help or advice? She pauses for a moment. I've been a little hesitant to spend my points, master, since I couldn't be sure my choices were exactly what you wanted. I didn't want to make any mistakes. What? It's your skills and your biomass, Chrysalis. You spend it however you want. Just because they are pets I don't want to micromanage every aspect of their lives. I'm probably a bit naive about it, but I like the idea of my pets making their own choices and finding their own way in life. Is it because I'm lazy and can't be bothered going through all the menus and burning up my brains working out a balanced strategy where every member of our group functions as a cohesive part of a whole? Maybe. Still, viva la freedom. Viva la pet choice. They can work it all out on their own. I don't need to get involved. So tell me, RinoZ, I say cheerily, how many points have you spent? What sort of skills are we looking at? Opening square bracket dot 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 dot. Closing square bracket. What is this? Somehow, even though she doesn't have a face, I can tell she's looking away from me. What's wrong? Have you got a few points stored up? I'm happy to give advice if that's what you want. Closing square bracket. Opening square bracket dot 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 closing square bracket. Something is starting to dawn on me. RinoZ, how many points have you saved? Opening square bracket dot dot. All of them. All of them. You haven't spent a single thing. I'm sorry, master. I didn't want to spend them incorrectly. It's fine if you just spend them however you want. Do what you think will work for you. But what if I make a choice that doesn't work out? Or doesn't work with what you wanted me to do? Dot 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 dot. Sigh. It's nice to have a pet that's diligent and thoughtful, a direct contradiction to Tiny, but she's too diligent and thoughtful. She's become paralyzed by wanting to make the perfect selection. Unable to make a choice because she's preoccupied by what I might want. It's time for me to show my understanding side and educate her, just as I educated Tiny. Dot 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 dot. Whop. Using my antenna, I swing one in a wide loop and whack straight into the little ball suspended in front me. Master. She cries in shock. Thwap. Go spend your points. All of them. Right now. But. THWA paw. Spinning both antennae, I whip one from the left and the other from the right, timing it so that one strikes a moment before the other, cannoning the little ball into the second blow, which sends her flying to the corner of the chamber. Every point. I'll be checking back on you in an hour. I turn aside from RinoZ's mental sniveling with a heart of cold steel. I know she's only trying to do what is best by me, but if I relent and go through the process with her this time, she'll come to rely on me even more. I want my pets to be more independent than that. If she can't even upgrade herself without consulting me, just how independent could she possibly get? This is tough love. You can do it, RinoZ. This is for your future growth and not because I don't want to dig through all of your menus with you. Dot 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 dot. In truth, a part of me kind of hopes that I can release my pets one day. The idea that they are essentially indentured servants, magically unable to refuse my orders, kind of sits uncomfortably with my modern sensibilities. Much as the colony has come to be. My family, Tiny and RinoZ, are also part of that family. I would rather that we teamed up and worked together as fellow family members than master and slave. Perhaps I'm just too sentimental. Tiny. Wake up, buddy. Come over here for a minute. The giant ape wearily opens his eyes and groans before rolling over and gradually picking himself up. Dot 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 dot. Is it really that much of a bother to move 5 meters over here? Eventually he pulls himself up onto his feet and walks over to me. His dark red bat eyes contrasting sharply with his black and silver fur. He really is an impressive sight. His huge, bunched shoulders and massively thick arms are intimidating enough, but his huge fists, well beyond basketball size at this point, look truly scary. How's it going, Tiny? I lead with an easy one. Opening square bracket dot 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 closing square bracket. Any minute now. Good. There it is. How are those skills going? Spending your biomass points okay? Opening square bracket dot 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 question mark closing square bracket. He tilts his head quizzically to one side. Well, I knew it was going to be like this. I'm going to use a skill on your big guy. Hold still for a minute, okay? When he nods, I place both of my antennae on his arm and activate the core surgery skill. Immediately huge amounts of information flood my brain and I have to whip processing speed up a gear to comprehend it all. Using the core surgery skill isn't like directly looking at the status menu of another monster and then making changes. Whereas the status screen is a nice piece of paper with everything written neatly, using core surgery is like sticking your face in a bowl of crumpled sticky notes. All of the information is there, but you need to filter it, sort it and poke about here and there before being able to piece together the full picture. Eventually I managed to get a handle on what Tiny's status is like. Name. Tiny. Level. 7 core. Might. 154. Toughness. 42. Cunning. 7. Will. 15. HP. 84/84. MP. 210 210ths. Skills. Ape boxing LVL5. Uppercut LVL5. Leap LVL5. Smash LVL5. Stamina LVL5. Grappling LVL5. Crushing blows LVL5. Fancy feet LVL2. Mutations. Enhanced musculature +4. Bones +4. Legs +4. Heightened sonic enhancer +4. Lightning mana affinity gland +4. Lightning mana affinity gland +4. Energy conversion gland +4. Species. Dire lightning storm Kong. Skill points. 28. Biomass. 129. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. So first off, he hasn't upgraded anything. Like nothing. He has what? 28 skill points and 129 biomass. Are you kidding me, Tiny? And what the heck is fancy feet? Chapter 199 Spendin'. What the heck has been going on, Tiny? I mean seriously, man. You haven't upgraded anything. Haven't spent your skill points at all. The only skill that look like you didn't already have it is fancy feet. And what the heck does that do? Have you been dancing behind my back, have you? Little bit of tap here and there. Dot dot dot. Sigh. I use my antennae to rub at my temples in an effort to ward off the impending migraine I feel coming on. I really thought that the pets would be able to handle this stuff without me interfering. Even if Tiny couldn't, I was sure that Chrysalis would be fine. After all the effort I put into enhancing her intelligence. Still nothing. Nothing. With Tiny, I'd mentally prepared myself for a lot. Nonsensical upgrades that made no sense, no synergy or evidence of even a mild amount of thinking. I'd prepared myself for that. To find that he hasn't done anything at all somehow hurts my head worse than those other options. I don't think he hasn't done it because he doesn't understand the idea of spending biomass or skill points. His mind is slow, that's for sure, but I doubt that he can't understand how to upgrade himself. Centipedes and dragon wolf cubs can spend biomass, I know they can, I've seen them with upgraded body parts. There is no way they can do it, but Tiny can't. No. The reason he hasn't done it is because he can't be bothered. It's too much hassle. This lazy ape. Tiny, lean down here for a moment, would you? Puzzled, the giant ape leans down, bringing his bat face a little closer to mine. Dot dot dot. Thwap. I whip my antennae around and smack them into his head on both sides. Go spend all your points. Right now. Opening square bracket dot 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 dot. Why? He sounds dissatisfied as he rubs at his bruised cheeks. Dot 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 dot. Stubborn gorilla. He has to obey my instructions so he will spend them, but it would be better if I could give him motivation that would make him try harder to spend them well. Dot 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 dot. If you spend all your points properly, you'll be able to hit things better. Dot dot dot. Ooh. A spark of interest lights up in his eyes. Tiny leans forward eagerly towards me, hoping for more. You'll grow stronger too. Maybe enough to fight that scary thing in the marsh. His brow furrows for a moment as he thinks hard before rushing to his feet and pounding his chest. Ooh, that's it, buddy. It's a good idea to spend all of your points. Go get him. Now. Ooh, he roars in his mind as he turns and sprints out of the chamber. Dot 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 dot. Oi, get back here, you ape. Spend your points. Don't go fighting. I cry as I chase after him desperately. It takes a little while, but I manage to calm Tiny down a little and reinforce the idea that spending points good, leaving them unspent bad. I get him settled in one corner where he sits with a glazed expression on his face as he trawls through the various menus. I don't envy him. He has to go through upgrade menus for literally every upgradable body part he has. Chrysalis is still vaguely wobbling in the corner as she also grapples with the problem of upgrading herself. She won't have nearly as many skill points or biomass as Tiny to chew through, but the fact that she is yet to spend a single thing makes a little worried. Even with my orders hanging over her head, she'll probably struggle to make choices. I think she'll be a while. Time for me to spend a few points myself. I've got 19 points of biomass to spend and another 14 skill points. The biomass will go quickly, but the skill points I'll need to spend a little more time on. I've got enough that I can branch out a little and perhaps allow myself a little leeway to pick up a few non-essential skills. Alright then. Biomass first. This one's easy enough. 12 points are needed to take my inner carapace plating to +5, which will leave me with 7 points to spend. I think I'll spend the extra 6 on my acid gland. The fact that I can spin magic now shouldn't take away from the ease of use and deadly restrictive properties of my business zone. I'm also pretty hopeful that there might be some juicy advancements to choose from when I get to +10. I'll keep my tiny little claws crossed on that one. Do you want to upgrade inner carapace plating to +5 and restrictive acid to +6? This will cost 18 biomass. Yup. At this level you are able to choose a mutation advancement. Please select from the menu. Then pow. The menu hits me right between the eyes again with a plethora of options. I start picking my way through, searching for something that makes sense for me and what I want from my inner plating. What exactly do I want from it? More defense, I guess. I mean, as far as I see it, there are two options for improved defense: tougher shell or faster healing. Generally speaking, I like having a mix of both. The tougher the shell is, the more valuable the healing, right? I have the regeneration gland to provide sweet healing in the event I need it, and I have my diamond carapace to provide the hard outer shell. The bone plating, right, is basically a reinforcing layer underneath the carapace, supporting it and making it more difficult to break through. I don't mind if the plating serves as a double role, reinforcing the outer shell and helping to repair it at the same time. Let's see if I can find something along those lines. Bingo. Regenerative inner carapace plating helps to regenerate damage done to the carapace in addition to improving its defensive properties. Nice. With this, my shell is capable of healing itself even more than before. Muahahaha. All I need now is to bolster my defense against magical attacks in some way. I need to start investigating and training my skills. Would you like to confirm these choices? Yep. FFFFFFTAGN. All over the inside my carapace. No. UHG, that's horrible. Now for skills. For the first time in ages, I bring up the skills menu and start pouring through it carefully, looking for options that might help me out in the current situation. I saw one skill in Tiny's list that I thought looked helpful, so I go straight to confirming what that might be. Stamina reduces the cost of actions or skills that drain physical endurance. The amount of reduction increases with skill level. Hot damn. That is handy. Consider it bought. Okay, what else is there? I check through the pet-related skills again to see if there is something I really want. Increasing growth speed doesn't really appeal, being able to view status. Well, if I think about it in terms of what the skills will turn into when advanced rather than what they are, then what would those skills turn into? Growth speed could become leveling speed. Increase in XP or biomass gained. That could be really handy. Viewing status would become changing status. Being able to spend skill and biomass points. The second one still doesn't interest me, but the first one could become useful. It's worth spending a point on. Purchased. The joy of spending points and growing stronger is filling me. Or is just the knowledge being dumped into my brain space. Chapter 200 upgraded and ready to roll. The rest of the pet skills don't interest me right now. I don't need to take the skill to increase the number of available pets until the system refuses to allow to. I may as well try and find a third now that I have the faster pet growing skill. Presumably I won't be able to level it up unless I gain a new pet. At that time perhaps the system will refuse to allow me reconstitute a monster and I can easily pick up the skill then. For now, let's look about and see what other skills I can find. Scrolling through the menus takes a significant amount of time. They don't seem to be organized in a properly logical way, with movement skills mixed with mental skill and magical skills sometimes tucked away amongst physical ones. It's almost as if you need to know what you're looking for and where to find it ahead of time, otherwise your only choice is to trawl through the lists checking every entry until you find something you like. Which is exactly what I'm doing right now. And it sucks. This one. No. How about? No. No. Who would want to get better at that anyway? Madness. There has to be some juicy new skills here somewhere. I need to look a little more carefully. I remember when the skill list had only 5 options on it. I don't know how. I don't know why, but that has ballooned out to over 100 at this point. I'm not sure exactly what causes the skills to become unlocked. There must be some sort of prerequisite that needs to be met. Perhaps with stats, or even actions in the world. For example, the pet skills. I don't exactly frequently check the skill list, but they didn't appear until after I had reconstituted my first pet. I didn't go looking for them until after I'd met Formo the Sophist, but it stands to reason that they were unlocked somehow. Which means that other skills must also have prerequisites before they become available. I suppose that humans and civilizations like the Sophists would have had hundreds of years to learn all this stuff and map it out, uncovering the most optimal paths, planning the best combinations of skills. Well, the Ant Kingdom will also have to compile this knowledge. Starting the first 20 of the new generation, I'll begin the process of learning the secrets behind the entire skill tree. Not a single leaf shall remain unturned. With renewed determination, I start reading through the skill descriptions one by one and I manage to uncover a few gems. Mana Miser allows the user to be able to do slightly more with slightly less when utilizing mana. Effect will increase along with skill level. Cerebral endurance. The user will be able better marshal their mental resources, reducing the mental exertion for complex will-based tasks slightly. Meditation. User will be able to relax the mind and achieve clarity of thought. Each level will make the state more effective and easier to achieve. Each of these three makes a lot of sense to me from a magic user perspective. More efficiency with mana, better mental endurance and a clearer, more focused mind. Perfect for my spell slinging ways. Purchased. Man, the number of skills I have is really climbing. Now that my skills are starting to climb into the third tier, it's becoming harder to train them, meaning I have to upgrade them less, causing my current skill point build up. I shouldn't go too crazy picking up new skills, perhaps only a one or two more. I keep flipping through. I've already picked up some skills on the mental side. Is there anything on the physical side that I could pick up? I start to focus in on skill names that seem to focus on physical prowess, but most don't seem that useful. There has to something that could be interesting. I need to remember not to judge a skill on exactly what it says at the first stage. After reaching level 5 and then level 10, the skills become much more useful. Look at dash for example. I ignored it initially since charging forward when I was just born would be little more than charging forward to my own death. After witnessing the awesome movement skills of the humans, it became clear that after being upgraded, that dash was almost essential for physical combat. Ooh, how about this? Precise shooting. The user will become better able to target objects with ranged attacks. This should work for my acid shot as well as my magic right. Purchased. Alright then. There has to be something else, something less passive. One more skill. Eventually I come across something that catches my eye. Even then, it sounds a bit nasty. Ripping Bite. Increases the user's ability to make bite attacks aimed at tearing away part of the target's body. That is badass. Purchased. With the warm trickling sensation of new skill knowledge flooding my brain, I feel pleased with my new purchases. New skills to level. New horizons to explore. Who knows exactly what these skills will turn into in the future. One thing I do know is that I need to start training up my skills quickly. My current options aren't nearly enough to handle the sort of conflicts we are going to start getting into, so I need to lift my game. Content with my spending for the moment. I turn to check in on my pets. Chrysalis is still bobbling away in the corner and Tiny remains seated, eyes glazed as he contemplates the upgrade menu. Good luck guys, I wish you well. Since I don't have much to do, I may as well start trying to grind my skills. Who knows? Perhaps I'll be able to unlock something interesting if I can get some of my skills to evolve. I settle in to wait for my pets to complete their spending and try to activate my meditation skill. It takes a little while, but I gradually feel a calm sensation begin to pervade my mind, my thoughts growing still and placid, my emotions fading into the background. With the proper mood established, I call on my mana and begin to practice. There's a lot of work to do. Chapter 201, The World Below, Part 1. Mirren awoke with a start. Instantly wide-eyed and alert, she turned her head to look around her, and her eyes were struck immediately by the austere white room in which she lay. She was lying on a clean bed in a small white chamber. On the roof a glowing crystal provided illumination, a clean white light that filled the space warmly. Just looking at that light nearly brought Mirren to tears. She'd feared that she would die surrounded by the blue light of the dungeon, seeping into her body and killing her slowly. She couldn't remember much of her arrival to the Legion base in the dungeon. After their long descent down the carved spiral staircase that the commander had referred to as Paraclasis Stair. That journey had tested the trainees to their limits. It had taken long days of endless marching to reach the bottom, spiraling ever downwards into the depths, and the lower they got, the sicker they become. None of the trainees had been down in the dungeon this deep, for this long. Without proper acclimation, the lower part of the first strata would normally be the first place that a dungeon delver would need to worry about saturation sickness, or the blues, as it was colloquially known. During this wave, which didn't seem to want to end, the mana had risen to ridiculous levels. The first strata was currently reading much the same as the second right now. The trainees were unable to cope. Every one of them was struck with the blues, quite literally turning a light shade of blue as the raw mana of the dungeon began to pervade their bodies. Mana saturation sickness was an insidious killer and a truly messy death. Delvers, mercs, and every being who entered the dungeon lived in fear of it, their bodies literally breaking apart cell by cell as the excess energy ravaged their bodies. The trainees got their taste of it as they walked the endless stairs. They began to stumble, their legs no longer responding as they should. The further they got, the more the symptoms became pronounced. Their vision slowly overtaken by a blue haze that made it difficult to see, their hands started shaking, then the whole body. The young, strong trainees began to experience the fear that was normally reserved for the aged, the fear of having their own body betray them and begin to fall out of their control. Through it all they felt no pain, only a giddy, inexhaustible nervous energy. The blues didn't make people feel tired, as the name might suggest, rather the mana suffusing their body and brain numbed them and gave them the jitters, as if they'd been drinking 5 cups of coffee every hour. They couldn't sleep, couldn't rest, couldn't think clearly, they were both more exhausted than they'd ever been in their lives and completely unable to rest. With the encouragement and support of their fellow legionaries and officers they'd barely made it, the only other members of the party struggling as much as them was the prisoners the Legion had mysteriously brought with them on this expedition. Less capable than the trainees, many of them had to be carried towards the end, the soldiers taking turns to hoist the murderers on their backs as they battled the long march. The last Mirren could remember was arriving before a large stone door. She could barely see by that point, the door itself was nothing but a blur. The commander had stepped forward and done something, and the door had swung open, vague figures had rushed out, gathering the sick members of the party and bringing them inside. She had collapsed into the arms of the person rushing towards her and then woken up here. Looking around the room some more, she noticed a strange arrangement on the side of the bed. A tube had been inserted in her arm, surrounded by a glowing enchantment that had been drawn directly onto her skin. Nervously following the tube with her eyes, she saw it was attached to another enchantment drawn on a nearby flat table. The center of the table held 4 softly glowing cores. Mirren stared at the strange setup, puzzled. After closing her eyes to try and feel if anything was different, she noticed that her saturation sickness was significantly better. If she focused hard, she was able to feel the flow of mana in her body, slowly inching down her arm before being leached out through the tubes and being fed to the cores on the table. She was stunned. She'd never even heard of this kind of treatment before. Such fine manipulation of the mana in another person's body via an enchantment. How had they done it? I haven't heard anything, Alberton, but as soon as I do, you'll be the first to know. The commander's voice penetrated through the door. Soon after, the tread of heavy feet could be heard as the loremaster and commander continued to argue with each other. I just can't understand why we didn't make more of an effort to prevent Garalosh from reaching the surface. You know what will happen up there. That's my family, damn it. There was a heavy thump, as if a fist had smacked into a wall. You think you're the only person with family up there, Alberton? You think I don't want to rip the head off that croc and protect our people? Is that what you think? The commander demanded quietly. There was a long pause and Mirren began to wonder what was going on when she barely heard the loremaster sigh and reply. I'm just worried. We all are, but we have a duty to get here to HQ and support the bulwark. As much damage as Garalosh can do, would you want the second strata monsters to rise to the surface? Do you know what that would mean? This wave isn't ordinary, Alberton, and you should stop pretending that it is. The entire world could go up flames if we aren't careful. Another sigh and a quiet. I know, before the door suddenly opened and the 2 top officers of the Lyria branch Legionum Abbasi strode into the room. Ah, good to see you're finally awake, trainee, Titus nodded. Mirren nodded in return but felt a little confused. This greeting didn't feel as positive as it should. Something about her commander's tone and posture was off. Even Alberton looked somewhat downcast, almost not meeting her eye. Is this the HQ? She asked. Yes, Titus affirmed. You're in the medical wing. The mana saturation was much higher than expected on this journey. We had to perform emergency treatment to lower the mana levels in your body. All of the trainees received the same treatment. You're the last to wake. Mirren's head spun for a moment. So all of them had been in this place. Where were they now? Alberton could see the question in her expressions. The others are waiting for you. We have to move quickly, he said. Can you walk, trainee? Titus asked. Mirren tested her legs. I think so, sir. She rolled out of her bed and stood shakily on her feet. She was still weak from the blues. Titus didn't wait for her to ask and stepped forward to support her, carefully removing the pipe from her arm as he did so. In silence, the 2 old officers walked with her out of the room and down a long corridor. The place was strangely empty and quiet. Mirren didn't see or hear another person as they traveled. They came to a heavy wooden door with a carved, enchanted lock on the door. Titus waved his palm in front of the elaborate carving and it immediately glowed with bright light before the door swung open to reveal a winding staircase carved in rock. Not another one, Mirren thought. Not saying anything, the 3 descended, Titus keeping a steady grip on her shoulder to help her navigate the steps without falling. At the bottom of the stairs was a small chamber with another door in it, and gathered there were all of the trainees. Mirren felt relief when she finally saw other people. The feeling quickly faded when she realized that the air was tense in the room, the trainees were nervous, the officers solemn. With the trainees tightly packed together in the small space, Titus took a position on the lower steps, placing him higher than his audience so they could see him, and began to speak. Congratulations, trainees. You have successfully braved the dangers and hardships of this delve and made it here to the headquarters of the Lyria branch of the Abyssal Legion. I'm proud of you. And he really was. Looking down on these young legionaries filled him with pride. They were good people, strong people. They had sacrificed, fought, upheld the tenets of the Legion and proven their mettle. They gave him hope for the future. The trainees themselves allowed themselves a small smile at the rare words of praise from the commander, but the serious expression on his face dampened the mood quickly. You represent half of the trainees inducted in your year. The others have been weeded out. Not dedicated enough. Not loyal enough. Not willing to sacrifice. Only those that we trust to keep the secrets of the Legion and do their duty make it this far. You have earned the right to become full legionaries. Excitement, smiles and joy lit the expressions of the trainees. This was what they had been hoping for ever since they enrolled. They had worked so hard for this. Titus saw the looks on their faces and it acknowledged it with a nod even as his heart sank in his chest. This was always the hardest part. Chapter 202, The World Below, Part 2. Titus was a renowned legionary above and below the ground. He was known for his strength, his iron will, his leadership and his willingness to put himself in harm's way to protect his fellows. He was a leader who never spared himself. Most of all, he was known for his unyielding sense of duty. He had sacrificed over and over again in order to perform the role he filled, and he would damn well do it again. He never hesitated, did not regret, but often, he grieved. Looking down at the eager trainees below him, he felt sorrow grip his heart. But it didn't stop him. You are about to undergo the final trial on the path to becoming full members of the Deep Legion, he announced. Serious expressions overtook the trainees at the word trial. What would they need to do? You have experienced severe monosaturation sickness on the way here, and we have done what we can alleviate the symptoms, but we have not cured you. Behind that door lies the greatest secret of the Legion. We will cure you of saturation sickness permanently. The process will also make you stronger, faster, smarter, more powerful than you currently are. When it is done, you will be reborn. A few gasps and disbelieving murmurs erupted from the youths in front of him. Was any of this even possible? Titus pointed to the door behind them. Beyond there lies the greatest secret of the Legion. It enabled the first legionaries to perform the heroic feats deep in the dungeon that helped end the cataclysm thousands of years ago, and it fuels us. Today, every full legionary you have ever met has undergone this process, including me. The commander took a deep breath. No avoiding it. Let's go in and I'll explain further. Titus gestured to Alberton, who squeezed through the cramped chamber before unlocking the enchanted seal on the door and striding through. Titus waited on the stairs until everyone had entered the next room before stepping forward, closing the door behind him as he did so. Of all the trainees, Mirren was the only one to note his actions closely, and a sudden fear gripped her heart. The way they moved, it was almost as if they had been blocking the exit, making sure that it was impossible for someone to get past them. Suddenly anxious, she cast her eyes around the room they now found themselves in. The room itself was unremarkable. Light was provided by glowstones embedded in the ceiling, which illuminated a simple and unadorned stone chamber. The chamber itself was long, but narrow, with regular offcuts down the right side. Pushing past her fellow trainees, Mirren saw that in each offcut a narrow basic had been chiseled into the floor, almost like a bath carved into the stone. Counting quickly under her breath, she saw that there was 30 such pods, each with the same narrow basin that appeared designed to have a person lie down in it. Closely inspecting the pod, she realized the ceiling directly above each basin was not as simple as she had first assumed. Incredibly fine, intricate runic patterns had been carved into the surface, the lines so thin she almost hadn't seen them. In the center of the pattern a thin hole could be seen, perhaps for something to flow through and fill the basin. Even the basin itself was covered in intricate runic inscriptions. Just what were these for? Her anxious musing was interrupted by a sudden clap from the commander. All of the trainees stopped gazing around and turned back to their officer, paying close attention. I will now explain the process to you, the commander said crisply, his eyes hard with determination. Listen closely, as this will impact the rest of your life. He paused there to ensure he had their full attention. Each of you will strip down and lie in a separate pod. From the ceiling above we will release pure, condensed liquid mana that will fill the basin until you are submerged. The fluid will be absorbed into your body, remaking it into something new. After 24 hours it'll be done and you'll be a full legionary. The trainees were staring at him as if he were insane. Liquid mana. What the hell was that? Donnellan stood with the rest, his mind flicking at lightning speed. If mana could be condensed into a liquid, wouldn't it be much more potent than the energy in the dungeon? Wouldn't they just die? Titus could see their confusion. He did not move to reassure them. This process is exceedingly dangerous. It will be the most painful experience of your lives. Every cell in your body will become super saturated with mana, tearing at the seams. There are powerful healing enchantments built into the basin. You will be ripped apart and remade constantly for a day. 1 in 5 of you will not survive. The deep, stern voice of Titus faded away and there was total silence as the trainees stared back at their commander in shock. They had been prepared for many things, but not this. Alberton spoke from behind them, his voice weary with sorrow. To defeat the monsters, to protect the civilizations on the surface, the Legionum Abyssi decided that to be human was not enough. In order to overcome the cataclysm, to make sure that it would never happen again, this was the step they decided to take. His words fell on the young trainees like stones. This was real. It was going to happen. Fear gripped their hearts as they imagined the agony of having their very cells ripped apart for hours on end. Could they endure it? Several thought fleetingly of running, of escaping this chamber and the insane ritual about to take place, but they quickly squashed the thought. Who was that standing in the doorway? They thought bitterly. Commander Titus. He was a legend in the Legion. If all of them unleashed their most powerful skills at once, would they shave even 1 HP from him? Nobody is forced to take the ritual, Titus announced grimly, bringing relief to the trainees. Before they could start to celebrate, he pulled the short sword on his hip from its sheath and gripped it tightly in his right hand. But you cannot know the Legion's secrets and not be one of us. If you wish to spare yourself the suffering, step forward and I will give you a quick end, he said. Dash 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 dash. Alberton found Titus staring at the wall outside the ritual chamber, as he always did once the trainees had begun their transformation. Once the process was done, they would be remade into an entirely new species, no longer human, but Legion. They could delve further into the dungeon than anyone else could hope to, able to tolerate levels of mana saturation beyond what a normal person could ever dream. They would be able to take the fight directly to the monsters, able to chase them down wherever they chose to hide. That was what it meant to join the Abyssal Legion. This had been done for thousands of years, all over Pangera. The secrets of the first legionaries had been kept ever since those days. As loremaster, it was Alberton's role to keep the histories of those days, and the determination, the sheer will of those men and women had remained within their spirit to this day. That didn't mean they liked it. The screams echoed through the chamber now. Down the corridors and up the stairs. On, endlessly screaming. Alberton could well remember what it had been like. He still experienced it in his nightmares, his throat ripping apart from the force of his shrieks only to be healed instantly, allowing him to scream some more. Amidst the howls of agony, a tap, tap, tap of chisel on stone could faintly be heard as Alberton approached his friend. As he drew closer, the memorial wall became clear. Thousands of names had been written here by Legion commanders through the centuries since this base had been established. Titus knelt on the ground, his hands steady as he added one more name to the bottom of the list. Alberton felt his heart twist with pain. The Legion did everything they possibly could to test their new trainees before they reached this point. Anyone they didn't think would be willing to undergo the baptism had been separated, recommended to other forces, placed in the auxiliary or other surface teams that were not required to delve. Even though the trainees didn't know it, they had been forensically examined for years before they reached this point. The Legion didn't want to have the blood of their own people on their hands. Unfortunately, no system was perfect. Trellick had been unwilling to undergo the baptism. He had accepted Titus' offer. Now the commander knelt and added his name to the wall, along with every other trainee who had not survived the final trial. Tomorrow, the baptism would be over and Titus would have to kneel here again. It was impossible to converse with the horrific cries of their own people ringing in their ears. Instead, Alberton walked beside his friend and placed a hand on his shoulder as he let his eyes roam over the names on the wall. The Legion was the front line against the dungeon. None fought harder or delved deeper than they. To achieve this, they had been called on to relentlessly sacrifice. None more so than Titus. Alberton let his gaze rest on one name in particular. Romanus. How must it have felt, he sighed, when the commander had carved his only son's name into this wall. Chapter 203, The World Below, Part 3. Her hands hurt like hell. Mirren leaned against the parapet of the Legion HQ and took in the view, resting her forearms on the stone. How are you holding up? A voice came nearby. Mirren turned to see Donnellan approaching from along the wall. Couldn't sleep either, huh? She asked him. Not a chance in hell, he muttered. Neither of them wanted to talk about their baptism, but they couldn't help thinking about it. When they had finally been taken out of the basin, the trainees had immediately lost consciousness, their minds longer supported by the complex enchantments that had surrounded them. Upon awakening, they learned that 3 of their friends had died. All things considered, it wasn't a bad number. Below average. She could see the relief in the officers' faces that they hadn't lost more. It seemed stupid to be thankful of only 3 deaths, but she understood their logic. Would the situation be somehow better if 4 had died? No. The commander and the rest of the legionaries had been passed to visit them in the days since. The trainees had been placed in a convalescence unit, comfy beds, good food, medical staff around the clock, counseling specialists, the works. On the surface, Mirren would have been shocked to think of the cost of the lavish treatment. The Legion was legendarily thrifty. They made most of their own equipment, ate nutritious but brutally unflavored food. It was a regular sight for the trainees to be seen cleaning their leathers and polishing their swords outside the barracks in the dawn light right next to their officers. The trainees were learning just how many things they had thought they'd known had been an elaborate deception. The Abyssal Legion they thought they'd known, the dungeon they'd thought they'd known, indeed, the world they thought they had lived in were so far from the truth. Did you ever think that something like this could exist? Mirren asked Donnellan as he joined her. Absolutely not, he answered flatly. In fact, I specifically remember being told such a thing was impossible. Even though she was looking at it, Mirren still thought it was impossible. It was a city. In the dungeon. A vast egg-shaped cavern of impossible size, kilometers across and many more high, filled with people. The buildings covered the bottom of the cavern and then extended up the walls, carved into the rock face. A gigantic glowstone at the top of the space provided illumination in the day and faded at night, regulating the time for the thousands of citizens here in Rayla. Through some mechanism she couldn't imagine, the cavernous space managed to keep the dungeon veins out. There was no risk of monsters spawning within the city itself. Such safety within the dungeon felt weird to her. She'd spent every moment underground up to this point being completely alert. To be this relaxed down here felt unnatural. From her vantage point, Mirren could see the city bustling with activity day and night, the people moving like ants in the cramped streets below. Even now, the light of thousands of lamps lit the city at night like a sea of candles in the darkness. It was incredible. The Legion headquarters was about halfway up, a citadel that occupied a position of great standing, looking down over the rest of the city. She hadn't been able to explore much yet. The trainees were basically confined to recovery. Not the trainees actually. Full legionaries now. Mirren had longed for that for so long. How's your hand? Donnellan asked. She glanced down at the heavy bandages that wrapped her forearms all the way to the tip of her fingers. Better, she said. They've been healed, but they're worried about damage to the bone, so I'll be under wraps for a few days yet. Donnellan's expression twisted a little. Unable to contain his curiosity, he eventually asked, "Is it true how they got injured?" "What did you hear?" She answered. "That you punched the commander in the face." Mirren shrugged her shoulders uncomfortably. "It's true." Donnellan whistled his appreciation. I cannot even imagine it." Did he say anything? He hadn't. The commander had visited each trainee personally upon their awakening. When she'd finally opened her eyes and got her bearings, he'd already been there. He didn't explain, or justify. He just sat there. On seeing the man that she'd trusted so much, almost like a father, who had done such an unspeakable thing to her and her friends, she'd lost it. Rage and fury had exploded in her. She'd been able to contain it at first. What would be the point of hitting him? When she asked how many had died and he told her, she'd leapt out of the bed and punched him right in the face with both hands. He hadn't resisted in any way, willingly accepting her strikes, but the end result was she broke both fists. She didn't think the commander had even moved. She'd spoken with some of her fellow trainees, especially Donnellan. There were feelings of anger, of betrayal, and of fear. Fear of the pain that kept them awake at night, fear of the never-ending horror of it, and deep down, fear that the Legion was right. They could feel now. Ever since they'd awoken, they could tell that something was different. Their bodies were absorbing mana out of the air, breathing it in and out through their pores. Mirren felt stronger, healthier, her mind felt like it moved more quickly, with greater agility. They hadn't even begun training or using their new bodies yet, but they could already tell that they had been fundamentally changed. She didn't think it would end with just this either, she thought there would be more secrets to come. She knew that her officers were good people. The impression she had of them from years of living alongside them weren't wrong. They were indeed the kind of hard-line, duty-bound hard heads that would put people they cared about through such torment, so long as they had good reason to. The torment was over, but Mirren was afraid to find out why it was necessary. The Legion had done this for thousands of years, why? What exactly are they fighting down here? She turned back to Donnellan. When do you think they'll let us out and into the city? She asked. He smiled. Hopefully soon. After everything that's happened, I could do with some leave. A few refreshments wouldn't go astray. Mirren shook her head. A whole new world to explore down here, and the only thing you care about is getting drunk. Yes, he said. After a pause, they both laughed and turned back to the city spread below them. Growing up in an undeveloped frontier country like Lyria had stunted them in many ways. They'd very rarely met members of the other races, didn't come into contact with the rare and powerful artifacts of the old empires. The frontier nations had been established in land that nobody had wanted, by people with the grit to try and carve out a new life for themselves. The kingdoms, empires, and alliances that had endured from the cataclysm to today were far-off legends to them. Here and now, looking down on the impossible city below them, they felt as if those fairy tales they had heard were so close they could reach out and touch them. A cough sounded behind them, and the two jumped, turning quickly to find Tribune Orlia behind them. I hope I'm not disturbing you, legionaries? The older woman inquired. The two stiffened at being approached by their officer. It would take a long time for any sort of trust to exist between them again. Orlia was not offended, or even surprised. She naturally knew how they felt. She'd gone through the same thing herself. The commander has called for you to assemble. It's time to find out if what you endured was worth it. Chapter 204, The World Below, Part 4. The rest of the new legionaries were gathered together in a cluster at the end of their ward under the watchful eye of a few centurions. The young soldiers felt restless. They still didn't know how to feel towards the Legion and the seniors who had cared for and trained them for so long. The pain of the baptism was still fresh in their minds, the scars still raw. Many of them felt a strange dual emotion towards the people they had once admired, equal parts anger and respect. Orlia stepped forward to address them. Thank you for gathering, young legionaries. You have endured the pain of the baptism and suffered the loss of friends, as have we all. She looked each of them in the eye directly, letting them see that she knew of their pain, shared it. I'm sure you've felt it already, the changes in your body. You are no longer what you were before. Your very flesh has been infused with mana, and this means a few things will change. Firstly, you can never live on the surface without regular doses of liquid mana to support your body. The mana there is too thin. Here inside the dungeon you'll be fine, but in the upper levels you'll begin to feel a bit weak. Murmurs erupted from the new legionaries at these words. Unable to live on the surface without liquid mana. If the Legion were the only ones who knew how to make it, isn't this just another way for them to be controlled? It also means, Aurelia interrupted their thoughts, that so long as you are able to absorb enough mana, you will be able to do things that you had never imagined possible before. Now she glared at them, impressing her will on them. All of them wilted before the strength she held in her gaze. I know that you are questioning the Legion, I did once also. When you have experienced the fight we are engaged in for yourself, you will no longer hold any such childish notions. If you truly want to protect your loved ones from the horrors of the dungeon, then you've come to the right place. The Abyssal Legion stands on the front line against the true threats, and for thousands of years we have done battle far beneath the surface, an unending war that few people in Lyria have ever heard of. She glared at them once more. Come. So saying, she turned and pushed open the heavy wooden doors that separated their ward from the rest of the legionary building before marching briskly through. The former trainees followed closely behind, trying to not stare at the bustle around them. Legionaries in their customary blackened leather armor stood in guard positions down every down corridor or passage they moved through. Auxiliaries dashed about, delivering papers, meals, equipment, or any of the million other tasks that the Legion needed done in order to operate. The new legionaries were hardly spared a glance as they followed behind Orlia, escorted by the centurions who followed them. The castle was carved directly into the wall of the space in which Rayla was situated. As with all things the Legion constructed, it was built on very clean lines, straight corridors and square rooms, giving the entire structure a very austere feeling. It was easy to tell that the structure was old. Possibly too old. Mirren looked around and made a few estimations in her head before she came to the shocking realization that this base, indeed, the city of Rayla itself, probably predated Lyria by a considerable amount of time. The Legion had been here long before the nation of her birth had even been created. This whole city. It didn't make sense. Why would the surface be so neglected that it was the last place to be developed, to be made habitable for people? She thought of her family and their humble history, working hard to carve out a life for themselves in the frontier kingdoms and the pride they had felt at what they achieved in such trying circumstances. Was it all a joke? There's an entire city down here. Long before her ancestors had even thought to join the expedition to the frontier. As she muddled through her conflicted feelings, the passage they were traveling through suddenly opened into a vast hall. Mirren gasped, shocked out of her thoughts by the grand scale of the space they now occupied. A high-arched ceiling, buttressed by powerful columns of stone and been carved straight into the rock, ornate, almost delicate supports stretched across the empty space to give strength and proportion to the stone. Clusters of glowstones illuminated the room in bright light, causing Mirren to squint against the sudden glare. Down the center of the room, between the columns stood 2 rows of stone statues raised on marble plinths. Each of the figures was a masterpiece. Incredibly detailed, perfectly proportioned. The level of skill that would go into making such a perfect piece of art boggled the young legionaries' minds. Each of the statues was a legionary. Men and women in full battle armor, weapons in hand, standing ready. Most of them were of advanced age, clearly senior officers or veteran soldiers. Scars crisscrossed their faces and arms, and their expressions were hard, as if there was little they hadn't seen. So lifelike were they that it felt as if they could jump down from their plinths and stride into battle at any moment. This the Hall of Remembrance, Orlia said over her shoulder. Here the greatest members of our branch have been immortalized in stone, preserved for history and for the battles to come. She pointed to one of the figures towards the end of the room as they continued to stride through the hall. Over there is Commander Titus, Father, Magnus. Almost despite themselves, the young legionaries felt their heads snap around to stare at the statue in the distance. A tall, bull-shouldered figure stood there, a great 2-handed hammer resting on the plinth and held casually in one hand. Even at this distance Mirren could see that the statue's features, broad chin, stern eyes and thick neck, were the same as Commander Titus. Some of the trainees were somewhat surprised to learn the commander even had a father. They'd felt as if he'd walked fully formed out of a mountainside. Once through the hall they were quickly brought into the armory. Before a large ornate door stood the commander himself, a rare half-smile on his lips as he watched his newest legionaries assemble before him. Oddly, he didn't say a word to them. He simply turned and pushed open the door before indicating with his head that they should walk through. Mirren had somehow found herself in the front. Feeling somewhat nervous, she stepped through the grand door and into the darkened space on the other side, cautiously letting her eyes adjust to the gloom before moving too far. As her vision improved, her footsteps slowed until she was completely still, dumbstruck. Lining the walls on either side of the room were massive suits of armor of obsidian stone and polished steel. An endless network of enchantments webbed the plates, the glittering blue light of residual mana providing most of the illumination in the space. What the heck are these? Mirren thought in wonder. The commander grinned. Who wants to suit up first? He asked. Chapter 205, The World Below, Part 5. Titus didn't wait for the legionaries to answer and immediately started calling names, lining everyone up before him in name order. The young soldiers were so accustomed to following his orders that doing as he said was almost instinctual. In the dim light the commander looked as impressive as always. His solid frame and clear eyes were reassuring to everyone in the Legion, even if they didn't know how to feel about it at the time. Once everyone was lined up appropriately, Titus raised his voice to address them. Ladies and gentlemen of the Legion. He smiled at them warmly. A rare sight indeed. Welcome. You have endured the pain and come through the other side. It is time to add the finishing touches to your induction as full legionaries. He turned and gestured to the armored suits that lined the walls. What see here is more legionary tech developed thousands of years ago during the Rending. Magical theory was highly advanced at that time, and in their desperation the creators of the Legion experimented with hundreds of different ways to increase their strength to defeat the monsters and preserve the light of civilization. The baptism you endured is one such technique, these suits of armor are another. He walked towards the nearest suit and knocked against the melded steel and stone plate. A hard clang rang out, ringing in the air. The armor was massive and bulky, impossibly so. Even Titus, as powerful and broad as he was, looked like he would struggle to move when weighed down by the sheer mass of the suit. Donnellan in particular was confused. He was a mage, used to wearing only light leather armor. Anything heavier would reduce his mobility to the point where it would be difficult for him to impact the battlefield where and when he was needed. The Legion didn't subscribe to the soft, mage approach of cloth armor and little combat training. Some forces preferred to have their mages spend all of their time in study. The Legion took a different approach, and Donnellan had been forced to endure harsh physical training, maintain his own leather armor and equipment, as well as learning how to defend himself with his staff or even bare hands. But surely they wouldn't expect him to clunk around like a turtle inside one of these things. "This is abyssal armor," announced Titus, a touch of reverence coming through in his tone. "Even now we struggle to reproduce the incredible level of craftsmanship that was achieved during the Cataclysm, but these suits have been made right here in Rayla." There was unmistakable pride at that announcement. Was this abyssal armor really that special? The former trainees stared hard at the oversized suits and struggled to see the value in them. Watching them, Titus could only shake his head. It was hard to understand just what the abyssal armor could do until you'd experienced it for yourself. He didn't blame them too much for looking down it. "Before you can test out the suits, we have a little item on the agenda that needs to be taken care of first. Class change." Mirren went wide-eyed at this. Class change. Now, every single one of you has met the requirements for your class. We aren't stupid. Titus laughed. "I'll ask you to step forward one at a time and we will enact the change. I'll be the trainer for all of you." He gestured for the first person to step forward, and soon after the soft glow of the class change radiated from that person's frame. Titus pointed to one of the suits and the first person moved to stand beside it before Titus gestured to the next. It was soon Donnellan's turn and he stepped forward nervously. "Don't be shy, lad. It's fine." Titus smiled at him. Donnellan eyed the commander. It was rare to see the grizzled veteran in such a good mood. "I'm not done with current class though, Commander," he said. "Is it really proper for me to change right now?" Titus nodded. "You'll understand in a moment. Step forward." Donnellan took the final few steps to close the distance to his commander, and Titus raised a hand to place it on his shoulder. As soon as he did so, Donnellan received a system prompt within his mind. "Would like to change class to Abyssal Legionary." What? Donnellan was stunned for a brief moment. The Abyssal Legion was actually a class within the system itself. This was almost unheard of. The cases where the system actually changed to recognize organizations that existed in the world were so few you could count them on the fingers of one hand. Yes. Donnellan hastily confirmed his choice. To inherit such a rare and unique class, who wouldn't be willing? The familiar trickling sensation washed over his mind as the system imparted new knowledge and skills to him along with his new class, and Titus directed him to stand next to a suit of abyssal armor towards the back on the left side. Still somewhat shocked, Donnellan stumbled over to his designated armor. As he approached it, he could see it was built lighter and more slim than the other designs, clearly more mobile and maneuverable than the more bulky versions. Judging by the size of it though, there was still no way he could possibly move whilst wearing it. Or could he? Donnellan quickly flipped open his status and took a look at his new skills. Sure enough, Abyssal Armor Operation Level 1 was there. As time passed and more of the new legionaries undertook the class change, Donnellan was able to absorb more of the knowledge being fed into his mind until he reached the point where he was able to understand the suit next to him to some extent. Even what little he didn't understand was enough to shock him. This wasn't armor. This was a priceless masterpiece. The enchantments, the crystal filament wires, the incredible alloys that made up the plates, all of it was insane. When every trainee had changed their class and taken their place next to a suit, the commander instructed them to suit up. With the newly imprinted knowledge fresh in the minds, they were still hesitant to follow the instructions within their head. It just didn't seem real. Donnellan decided to just go for it and stepped in front of his suit. Raising one hand, he placed it on the chest plate of his abyssal armor and waited. Perhaps he could feel it. According to the knowledge he now possessed, the suit was powered by mana, not by his own physical frame. Without excessive use of incredibly dense monster cores, moving something like these suits of armor would be nigh impossible, but the suits didn't use cores at all. Instead, they drew on the mana infused within the bodies of the legionary wearing it. Something like this could never be done by someone that hadn't undergone the baptism. The legionaries, very flesh was infused with mana and they absorbed it from the dungeon at an accelerated rate. Thanks to the incredible magical engineering within the suits, they were able to supply enough power to move it themselves. Gradually, Donnellan became more aware of the flow of mana from his body into the suit. As time passed, the flow increased and the thousands of tiny enchantments carved into the ornate surface of the armor began to glow with the light of mana. The light spread throughout the suit, starting at the breastplate he had his hand on and then flowing throughout the suit until the entire thing was powered. Gradually, the armor began to float, piece by piece, onto his body, the various plates clicking into place. Around his arms, chest, neck, and then legs. He had to lift his feet to allow the oversized boots to snap together around his ankles. Once the helmet had settled into place and locked onto the pauldrons, it was done. The feeling was strange, almost like being locked in a tomb, but at the same time, the armor felt like a second skin, as if it were connected to his body and mind. It moved so fluidly and naturally. It just didn't seem real. Get yourselves accustomed to the feeling, legionaries, Titus said. We are going to be training in these suits for next few weeks until you advance your skills to the 3rd tier. This is how we fight down here. Welcome to the world below. Chapter 206, New Dawn. There they are. Look at them. Peacefully sleeping for now, awaiting the day when they awake and take their first steps into the world. Shish, little ones. You don't know it yet, but the world will be your oyster. Yes, it will. You will roam wherever you wish and bring prosperity to our family. Our enemies will flee before your strength and become food beneath your mighty mandibles. Yes, they will. You adorable little things. Master. Wah. What now? Chrysalis, why are you interrupting egg time? I'm very sorry, Master, but I believe I have detected another wave approaching from the tunnels below. Ha. These stupid monsters just won't stop. I'm going to have to work out a solution for this problem before the time approaches. These waves have caused no end of headaches and significant losses to the colony over the last week. Those crocs down below are going to get what's coming to them, the sooner the better. I'm on the way, Chrysalis. Tiny, wake up. Time to fight. Oh, fight. ... Reluctantly, I turn away from the 20 small, white spheres occupying the egg chamber. They are, in fact, the only occupants of the egg chamber, and the workers have been caring for them diligently, but I can't help coming up to take a look at them every now and again. When I think of the future that these little eggs could bring for the colony, I get so excited I just can't help myself. I put in a lot of work to create those eggs. I deserve to be a little happy now that they've finally arrived, damn it. Just 3 days ago, the queen managed to gather the biomass necessary to lay this small clutch, and it'll take a few more days before they hatch, and then 2 weeks for them to complete their time as larvae and become pupa, then a little longer for them to finally eclose and take their place under my tutelage. It's so long. I know it's my own fault for extending the development time of the workers in order to squeeze more stats into them, but I'm so frustrating right now. I feel like kids probably felt at Christmas when there were presents waiting under the tree. I didn't get to experience that during my human life, but I think I finally grasp that emotion now. The wait is tortuous. Grumbling to myself, I descend through the main shaft of the nest, through the queen's chamber and into the area my pets and I have made our home. It's been somewhat expanded recently, mainly to accommodate Tiny and allow us a little more space in fighting of the dungeon monsters that have swarmed up the tunnels periodically over the last week. My pets and I have been training our skills, using our shortcut to venture deeper into the dungeon and harvest biomass for ourselves and for the queen. We've seen significant gains in pumping up our new skills, and our overall combat effectiveness has risen as a result. I'm quite pleased that my pets now have properly allocated skill points and mutation advancements, even if it took way too much effort to finally get them there. We ran into serious trouble twice during our escapades. When Tiny and I ventured down, leaving Chrysalis on guard duty, she had to fight off a wave on her own. Thankfully, the ants from the chamber above became aware of the ruckus and rushed down to support her. By the time Tiny and I returned, it had been cleaned up and casualties were at the minimum. We were a bit more cautious after that and tried to make sure no monsters were able to slip past us. Still, the second time they managed it. Through some twist of tunnel, one of the waves managed to find an alternate access point to the surface. We had no idea they up there until the colony had engaged with them and started calling for reinforcements. When the queen's guards in the chamber above started moving out, we were alerted and rushed out with them. Eventually we were able to find the monsters and defeat them, but not before a significant number of workers had been killed in the engagement. The human refugees had almost been caught up in it. When the battle raged, the fighting had gone right to their doorsteps. Being saved by the colony seems to have driven their affection for ant monsters to even greater heights. When workers wander past their growing encampment, they bow respectfully and cheer. It's getting a bit unnerving. We've been even more careful since then. I would have rushed straight into the dungeon and shoved my mandibles through those stupid crocs' faces if I could, but I wanted to make sure the colony was safe first. That was a few days ago now. We've been quietly building our strength since then, getting ready to launch our invasion and claim the marsh expanse for ourselves. Nobody messes with my family and gets away with it. Entering the chamber, I see Chrysalis and Tiny ready for action. Chrysalis has extended her tentacles down the tunnel for more than 100 meters, stretching her strange flesh to the limit in order to detect vibrations down the tunnel. Bring it all back, Chrysalis. Time to get ready to fight. Yes, master. The little tennis ball of boundless hunger begins to retract the thin, wire-like tendrils she had painstakingly extended down the tunnel back into her body. When the task is done, she inflates herself back to her combat-ready size, ready to unleash destruction upon our foes. Tiny has long been ready. His hands clench and unclench repeatedly as if he can't wait to allow his fists to go to work. The silver hair on his arms is already beginning to rise as electrical current begins to flicker across his body. Ever since advancing his skills, Tiny has become even more obsessed with fighting, if that were even possible. I think that now he can advance his skills again, there is even more relish to be had in the thrill of battle for him. Actually, where the heck is he going? Unable to contain himself anymore, the ape dashes down the tunnel, whooping with delight. Damnable ape. Let's go, Chrysalis. Rushing after him, Chrysalis and hurtle down the tunnel ourselves. In front of us, I can see Tiny moving with impressive speed, hands and legs flailing with a strange grace as he propels his massive frame forward like a hairy, overweight gazelle. I should never have told him about the dash skill. With us hurtling down and the monsters rushing up, it doesn't take long for the two sides to crash into each other like speeding trucks. Boom. Chapter 207. The boys and girls are back in town. As Tiny smashes into the front of the monster wave, I can hear a voice calling from behind me. Hey, hey. Wait for me, senior. Vibrant. As Chrysalis joins Tiny on the front lines, the little ant motors down the passage behind us to quickly catch up, and I sigh internally. It isn't that we've been ignoring the little thing lately, or trying to leave her behind. It's more that she's become a little too reckless, flinging herself forward into combat and trying to get her mandibles dug into the flesh of our opponents. The result of such behavior is that she nearly gets smashed by Tiny or eaten by Chrysalis as they rampage. It's not as if Chrysalis has any way to communicate with the little worker. As friendly as they are with each other, they don't share the same bond that Chrysalis and Tiny do. I've confirmed with Chrysalis multiple times that within a certain range she can sense my location as well as Tiny's. This prevents her from ripping into Tiny as they fight together. Vibrant. You need to wait here with me for a second, I said. Fought. I want to fight. She complains. Look at big sis Chrysalis. She can fight so well already. I want to be like that. Sigh. This is the source of the problem. Her former partner in smallness, Chrysalis, is all grown up now and wrecking faces, whereas she has yet to evolve, still a superior hatchling, not really capable of contributing to tough fights like these. Tell you what, you go up to the ceiling and fire acid to get some skill points, and we'll save a good chunk of monsters for you to finish off. After all this time, you're fairly close to your next evolution. If we can manage it, you might even be able to evolve today. Yai. She cheers like a happy child and rushed up to the ceiling to begin raining acid down on the horde of onrushing monsters. Well, at least she's happy. Vibrant has been something of a restraint on our strength since she isn't really powerful enough to wade into situations like this and come out alive. These shadow beast monsters are simply a cut above the kind of prey us ants would normally have to deal with. If she can evolve again, then perhaps she'll be able to hold her own. She's certainly had enough biomass to upgrade all of her body points to the limit by this stage, since we've been pumping her full of food for so long. Considering the regular feasts that have been delivering themselves to us on a regular basis, as well as our own farming activities, I've managed to pile up 114 point of biomass that I need to spend. This will be the last upgrade before our assault on the marsh expanse, so I need to make it count. Whatever the crocs can do, I need to do better. Charge. Eager to continue training my skills, I rush up the wall and begin weaving my magic. Make sure you guys save a lot of monsters for Vibrant to finish off okay. We want her to evolve today if possible. Yes, Master. GRRRN. You're that unhappy about only being allowed to punch the monsters mostly to death, huh, Tiny? Get over it, man. Moving on to the ceiling, where Vibrant has already taken up a position to hurl blasts of acid down into the fray, I take a moment to size up the situation. The tunnel is packed with onrushing shadow beasts. These guys are almost entirely low-tier monsters that are yet to evolve, but due to their nature as monsters from a deeper level of the dungeon they cannot be compared to centipedes and coral slugs in terms of their lethality. Their claws are sharp, their teeth are deadly, and the strange elastic shadow stuff that makes up their bodies is both strong and malleable, allowing them to twist and contort themselves to an alarming degree. Not quite to the same level that Chrysalis can, but stretching out their arms to attack a few extra feet is easily within their capabilities. Tiny has no issues wading into the battle. With his skills upgraded, he can clear his way through the mobs with more vigor than before. Particularly since his fist skills have reached a new tier. Raw. Tiny roars as his fists begin to glow with bright light. Thrusting forward one massive fist, Tiny unleashes his strength in a colossal blow that smashes the monsters directly in front of him. But it doesn't stop there. Boom. When the fist stops moving, the light continues forward as a mighty ape paw, scattering monsters 10 feet away from Tiny as they suffer the impact of his tier 3 boxing skills. As the monsters begin to try and swarm him, Tiny swivels on his heel and unleashes a devastating hook that blasts an arc of light around him, smashing the smaller creatures around him to the ground. Haha. Didn't see that coming, did you? Chrysalis has also improved her abilities. Her limbs reach out further than before and with greater agility to snag monsters from the crowd, lifting them up before entangling them with more tentacles and crushing them. Nice. By purchasing a few skills and mutating her body, the tennis ball that devours all, including hope, has increased her skill at manipulating her tentacles as well as their strength and flexibility. All in all, she poses a much larger threat than she did before. I honestly can't wait until she evolves. It'll be exciting to see how she'll grow. Not wanting to waste any more time, I hastily whip up a water construct and start feeding mana through it. The entire process is much more fluid than before, the transformation construct being pieced together with practiced ease. I've made thousands of these stupid things recently. It would impossible for me to not improve. Not only that, immediately I start weaving water bolts with both of my sub-brains, flinging into the crowd and knocking monsters down with each fierce impact. With my main mind, I start to work on something special. Operating the transformation construct carefully, I split off a third stream of water mana and begin to condense it, crushing the mana down under the weight of my mind. Gradually I begin to outline a water bolt frame made entirely of condensed mana. I really have to grind down my focus to achieve this, but it's one thing I've been practicing lately and the results are interesting. As the battle rages, I spend precious seconds assembling my spell. With Tiny and Chrysalis in the front line, I'm not worried. They could handle this wave on their own. I'm just here for the XP. Once the frame is finished, I begin to power the spell with condensed mana. With the shape of the spell formed of condensed mana, the construct holds up much better when filled with the volatile stuff. When it's finally powered and ready to cast, I take careful aim to ensure that I allow plenty of leeway so my own pets aren't caught in the blast. Fire. The water bolt, a deeper and darker blue than the others, almost as if it were formed of the water from the deep ocean, materializes above my head and rockets forth. The monsters don't have time to react before it impacts amongst them. Boom. Like a crashing wave, water explodes amongst the monsters, blasting them into the walls and crushing them into the ground. The spray from the impact is so strong it cuts into their bodies, leaving gaping wounds and in some cases severing limbs. Yikes. Condensed spells are really no joke. Chapter 208, Compression Obsession. As the rather explosive effect of my compressed water bolt faded and the monsters began to recover themselves as more flooded into the narrow tunnel to trample over the fallen, I took a little time to reflect on the success of the spell. Better than I thought, I had to say. After witnessing the effects of forceful mana spells, using the compressed mana to fuel a spell had such an explosive effect, I began to experiment with forming an entire spell from compressed mana. The structure, from beginning to end, weaved with threads of compressed mana, then the entire thing filled with compressed mana right to the top. My test results were promising, to say the least. However, this was my first time putting the spells to use in actual combat. I wanted to test them in a controlled situation and started with the most harmless of all my spells, the water bolt. The little testing I'd done with gravity spells had been somewhat alarming. I wasn't quite ready to put them to the test just yet. Maybe in a more open space. This first test is a RTO using success. Not only was the primary target completely pulverized, but the splash effect had a vicious cut to it as well, increasing the area of effect potential of the spell. I'm really quite excited for the next one. I stop my sub-brains from casting spells and begin to focus all of my mental energies on my next task. Dividing the labor between my minds, I begin to stockpile compressed mana as best I can whilst simultaneously weaving the forceful water cannon. The shaping of the spell I handle myself as it's by far the most difficult task. Beneath me Tiny and Chrysalis continue to battle away, smashing monsters all over the place but making sure to leave them on a sliver of life as much as possible. Tiny has a lot of issues controlling his strength and is just as likely to knock a monster's head clean off by mistake, but Chrysalis has far finesse. Like lightning, her limbs snap out to pluck up a monster and she wrings it out like a soggy cloth before dropping it on the growing pile of severely wounded monsters behind her. Perfect. Nearly there now. Eagerly I begin to fuel my constructed spell. The trick I found in my test run is that I can't quite transform mana and then compress it fast enough to keep up with the demands of the spell. Meaning I ran out of juice and the spell failed only a few seconds after I cast it. Those few seconds had been enough to drill a hole 3 feet in the tunnel walls though, so I'm expecting good things. To prevent the spell from such a premature failure this time, I've been carefully amassing a stockpile of compressed water mana as I go. Judging by the rate of consumption, I think I have roughly 15 seconds or so for the spell to operate. I'm looking forward to this. Forceful water cannon. Fire. Just above my head an ominously blue glowing ball flickers into existence for the water cannon starts. What comes out is less like a water cannon but rather a water beam. The monsters hit by it are less damaged but rather dissected. It cuts straight through them. As the water blasts straight through the monsters, it impacts against the tunnel floor and a vicious hissing noise fills the air as it starts boring a hole through. Hastily I direct the spell to zigzag its way up the tunnel and delight in the chaos caused. You have slain. 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 Ah, this spell is ridiculous. Some monsters are able to hold on for a moment, resisting the stupidly potent pressure of the beam with the strength of their bodies, but eventually it tunnels through them, boring a hole directly through their shadow flesh. Then the mana runs out. The entire tunnel is littered with monster bodies and a truly insane amount of water. The spray has gone everywhere. The walls are coated with it, the monsters are saturated. Tiny is also saturated. Chrysalis doesn't seem to care, but I can sense a smoldering discomfort emanating from the big ape. He really hates getting wet. In order to vent his frustration, he channels lightning into the onrushing monsters who charge directly into the soaked section of tunnel we occupy and are promptly burnt to a crisp. You were supposed to save some for Vibrant. 10 minutes later we finish mopping up the wave and start chowing down. I decided not to test any more spells lest Tiny get even more irritated. I should try and work out a solution where I'm not going to get him soaked. I'll be hitting the front lines soon enough, it should be fine. The first thing I do after the fighting is done is call Vibrant down from the ceiling and get her to finish off the stragglers that we saved for her. Thankfully, after she spends a lot of time chomping away at them, she cheerfully announced she was able to hit level 10. Not even the news that another special core was coming her way was enough to dampen the little ant's mood as she danced about whilst chowing down on biomass. Even Chrysalis managed to find her and toss her in the air a few times to celebrate as the Vibrant laughed hysterically. Tiny just ignored the proceedings and munched his way through a mountain of food. I'm with you, buddy. Time to embrace the food coma. Om nom nom. When all is said and done and we can barely walk any longer, I've managed to amass 129 biomass from my week of feasting and practice. The 4 of us waddle, roll, limp our way back up the tunnel to our little chamber and I call down the workers. We weren't able to eat all of the food, not even close. Hopefully, when the Queen has consumed a good chunk of this, the next generation of new workers might be locked in and ready to go. Settling in, we all prepare to finalize our spending in order to make the final push for excellence as we prepare to advance into the marsh expanse. I hastily whip up an advanced core after withdrawing a few small cores from my stash and feed it to Vibrant. Once absorbed, she somehow managed to both gleefully and painfully waddle to one corner to settle down and evolve. Tiny and Chrysalis have already begun the process of mutating. I can see them vacantly sitting, unmoving, pawing through menus already. Okay, time to do this. I'm gonna spend up big. Chapter 209, The State of Play. Muahahaha. With over 100 points to spend, I'm feeling slightly giddy. What to go for first? Currently I've upgraded eyes to +7 and acid to +6, so I may as well finish those off first. That'll take a significant chunk out of my points already. Would you like to upgrade focused eyes to +10 and restrictive acid to +10? This will cost 61 biomass. 61. Even if I already knew it, feels bad to hear Gandalf actually say it out loud. I still have 68 biomass to play with, so I need to get spendin'. Once I've upgraded these two, I'll still have legs, gravity mana gland, regeneration gland, pheromone and the two newest additions to go before I reach a complete +10 state. This is so frustrating. Just how much do I have to eat before I can upgrade myself all the way? Is it my tiny ant stomach that's the problem? I have two stomachs and I pack them both full every meal. When I consider that my current level of evolution supports upgrades up to +15, I can only feel depressed. The goal of fully mutating everything before my next evolution seems like a long way away. Work hard, stomachs. I'm counting on you guys. Since I'll be striding forth into battle after this round of upgrades, I really want to ensure my combat effectiveness is at its peak, not only on the offensive but also the defensive. I'm thinking that the regeneration gland could use a boost, just in case things turn south and I get bitten in half or something. Would you like to upgrade focused eyes to +10, restrictive acid to +10 and limb regeneration gland to +10? This will cost 101 biomass. Yikes. Only 18 left. I guess that'll be it for the full upgrades to +10. Enhancing my senses has never been a poor choice. I'll upgrade my trusty antennae next. With 18 biomass I can upgrade them to +7 and have 5 points in the bank. Okay then. Would you like to upgrade focused eyes to +10, restrictive acid to +10, limb regeneration gland to +10 and infrared antennae to +7? This will cost 114 biomass. Let's do it, oh bearded one. At this level of mutation you may select a mutation advancement. Please select one from the menu. First, I jump into the acid menu. My acid is the OG. When I was a weak and helpless ant, all alone without my colony to support me, it was the acid that became my trusty sidekick. Every combat would entail the acid attack playing a key role, letting me deal damage from range before closing in to finish the job. Since the rest of my body has been enhanced, as well as my magic growing to the point that it's a credible ranged threat, the acid has become outshined. I don't really need it to do damage, what I want is more utility out of it. The restrictive properties are great, if that could be enhanced I'd be interested, for sure. Let's see what the menu has for me. Wait a sec. Wait. 1 second. Magic eating acid. Acid becomes able to dissolve magic it comes into contact with, including barriers and constructs. Done. I don't need to see any more. In fact, I refuse. This is the sort of utility I'm talking about. Able to eat through magical barriers or constructs. Hot damn. Acid is back in town, in a big way. Already giddy with delight, I shift over to the slightly more pedestrian eyes. Hopefully there'll be plenty of boring options that'll calm me down after this excitement. Flicking through the menu, I can recall seeing most of this stuff before. Upgrading to +10 will already give my compound eyes an around quality upgrade, and honestly, ever since I took the focused mutation I haven't really suffered in the eye department since I can basically see like a human can directly forwards. The rest of the lenses, pointing up, sideways, backwards and so on, are still poor in comparison to human vision, but they do well enough to get me by. My default option would be just to enhance the focused upgrade to further improve my forward vision, but another option catches my attention. Omni-focused eye. Enhance key lenses to improve the long-range focus of the compound eyes in all directions, instead of only forward. I like it. It bears repeating sometimes that I don't have a neck. In order to face sideways I actually have to turn my body in that direction, hence the compound eyes helping out a lot. Being able to see in almost all directions without shifting my head at all is obviously a great advantage. The drawback of each individual lens in my eyes being quite crud is something I've just had to put up with. From the sounds of things, this upgrade will go some of the way to increasing the distance I can see in all directions, not just forwards. Along with the quality increase I get from taking the eyes from +7 to +10, I can expect a tremendous improvement in my all-around eyesight. Nice. 2 upgrades out of the way, it's time for the regeneration gland. When I first selecting an advancement for this organ, I was quite concerned about how less well defended my legs are compared to the rest of me, being relatively thin and unarmored. Being able to rapidly regenerate those limbs has helped out on a number of occasions and I'm quite satisfied with the results. Flicking through the menu for the regeneration gland, I can see that most of the enhancements that increase on the limb regeneration aspect feel a little unnecessary, basically regenerate them faster or more frequently. Not interested. What I want from the regeneration gland is to make it better at what I originally purchased it for, that is, healing me when I'm injured. I have the regenerative inner bone plating to help heal my carapace, and that's fantastic, but it doesn't do anything for my internals, organs or muscles, that might get damaged. The regeneration organ definitely still has an important role to play. Rapid regeneration organ allows the regeneration organ to refill. more quickly, meaning it can be used frequently to heal damage and restore HP. I like this choice, especially considering the campaign that is right ahead of me. Diving into dangerous, croc-infested marsh lands to battle for supremacy and eject the horrid things. I might need a whole lot of healing by the time we're done. With that, all of my selections are done. Time to mutate this ant. Would you like to confirm these choices? Ah yeah. Wait a sec. NNNNNNNNOOOOOOORRRRFFFLETABINNNNNN. Building rapidly is the most extreme itch I have ever experienced. The eyes. The eyes are so bad. Not to mention the organs inside my body, but holy mackerel, the eyes. I can't take it. The only blessing is that the others are so occupied by their own menus that they can't see me scrabbling and rolling about, desperately clawing at the dirt in a frantic attempt to alleviate the itch. My dignity is preserved at least. From up above I see a giant ant head poke down into the chamber to see what all the fuss is about. Damn it, mother. Name: Anthony. Level: 13 core. Might: 41. Toughness: 29. Cunning: 44. Will: 35. HP: 50/50. MP: 220/220. Skills: Excavation level 8. Improved Acid Shot level 6. Advanced Grip level 3. Shattering Bite level 7. Advanced Stealth level 5. Splintering Chomp level 4. Tunnel Map level 6. Mana Transformation level 6. Forceful Mana level 6. External Mana Manipulation level 2. Mana Sensing level 5. Core Surgery level 3. Advanced Exoskeleton Defense level 7. Pet Communication level 3. Rapid Dash level 1. Advanced Water Magic Affinity level 2. Stamina level 2. Pet Growth Speed level 1. Mana Miser level 4. Cerebral Endurance level 3. Mediation level 4. Precise Shooting level 2. Ripping Bite level 3. Mutations: Omni-Focused Eyes plus 10. Infrared Antennae plus 7. Mana Eating Restrictive Acid plus 10. Absorption Legs plus 5. Savage Infused Mandibles plus 10. Hardened Diamond Carapace plus 10. Rapid Limb Regeneration Gland plus 10. Pheromone Language Gland plus 5. Deep Gravity Magic Gland plus 5. Divergent Coordination Cortex plus 5. Regenerating Inner Carapace Plating plus 5. Species: Dispersed Mind Ant, Formica. Skill points: 16. Biomass: 5. Chapter 210. The ANT team. Eventually, the horrific itching fades, and I scramble back to my feet and cast my eyes about to see who was witnessing my fervent rolling. Thankfully, it appears that Mother retreated once she was sure all of the noise wasn't related to some threat or danger of any kind, and my pets are too busy with their own mutations to have time checking on me. Phew. Since that is the case, I can relax. I really need to make sure that I'm on my own or somewhere that I can't be seen when doing significant mutations like that. I don't know what it is, but the sensation of my own body shifting and changing as the surging biomass roils through my body is just itchy. What even is biomass anyway? It can't be the raw material since that gets dissolved down in some way within me. It isn't as if my stomach continually feels full until I spend my points. As time passes, I feel the food getting digested, and then I start to feel hungry again. Perhaps monsters extract something from the food they eat. Some sort of concentrated stuff. The higher the evolution of the monster, the more stuff they have in them. Maybe. I don't know. I just eat things. Considering that nothing comes out my business end barring acid and magic consuming justice, all of that food must be going somewhere. I've already resolved to investigate all things stomach upgrade during my next evolution, but internally I double down on that resolution. The mysteries of the biomass need to be unlocked. Quickly cleaning my antennae and running a keen eye over myself, I double check my status before spending some time adjusting to my new vision. I wouldn't say I can see as well as a human can in all directions, but it indeed is significantly better than before. My forward eyesight has somewhat improved, but all other angles are dramatically better. I'll need to wait until I get somewhere a little more open before I can thoroughly test my eye's ability to focus at a distance. I start practicing my water transformation and compression skills as I wait for my fellow team members to finish their work. Vibrant appears to have completed her work with the menu and has settled down to evolve. If she doesn't finish by the time the others are ready, we may have to carry her down with us. I wouldn't want to leave her behind, mostly because she would just run down the tunnels on her own and probably end up dead. Still, I'm interested to see what she can evolve into, considering she was a superior hatchling up to now. From a superior hatchling into a superior worker. That wouldn't be too exciting. Maybe she'll go straight into being a juvenile queen. For some reason, when I think of Vibrant's personality, I just can't see it happening. Sitting around the nest being motherly all the time. Vibrant. Not a chance. Time passes, and Chrysalis is the first to complete the process. She takes a long time to fiddle through the menu since she has such anxiety about making incorrect choices. Tiny takes longer, but I think that has more to do with his comprehension speed. How'd it all go, Chrysalis? I ask cheerfully. The little ball freezes momentarily before slithering over to me on a few tentacles. I hope I made the right choices, Master, she says somewhat miserably. I sigh internally. Just pick whatever you think is right. You know more about how you want to grow and fight than I do. You're the best one to make these decisions. But you are the best person to decide what it is that you want, Master. Gah, getting her to be more independent is going to be a long project. Just come over here, and I'll have a look at where you're at. I want to see how everyone is going before we set out, I say resignedly. Of course, Master. She bubbles. ... Bringing my antennae forward, I activate the core surgery skill and gradually piece together her general status. Name: Chrysalis. Level: 14 core. Might: 68. Toughness: 55. Cunning: 24. Will: 22. HP: 110 110ths. MP: 205 205ths. Skills: Advanced Shadow Flesh Manipulation Level 1. Grappling Level 3. Expert Shredding Level 4. Tremor Sensing Level 3. Dismembering Level 2. Fear Inspiration Level 3. Mana Manipulation Level 1. Tentacle Walking Level 1. Mutations: Shadow Flesh +3. Void Maw +3. Bottomless Dimensional Stomach +5. Dividing Tentacles +5. Ripping Spines +5. Macabre Teeth +5. Species: Blind Shadow Hunter. Skill points: 5. Biomass: 6. ... Why is that all her skills and upgrades sound so intimidating? How the heck did she even get Fear Inspiration? From what I can see, the skill educates the user in ways to act more intimidating or cause fear in foes. I'm not sure that's going to be a problem if she keeps leveling up Dismembering. Ah, I see you picked up Mana Manipulation, I say. Yes, Master. Is that okay? She sounds mildly panicked. Of course. You have a reasonable cunning and will stat. With practice, you'll be able to start slinging some spells like me. I think that was an excellent choice. ... Instead of replying, the little ball holding itself up on a few slender tentacles just becomes exceptionally still. Wait, that's not quite right. With my improved vision, I can make out that she's not still but actually vibrating slightly in place. ... That happy to be praised, I can only shake my head internally and leave Chrysalis in her own little world as I move over to Tiny. The big guy is gradually opening his eyes and shaking himself awake. I want to check his status as well before we get moving. How'd it all go, Tiny? Finished. Finish, he manages to grunt his reply even when speaking mind to mind. Let me have a look, big fella. He amblers over in my direction and I once again activate the core surgery skill. I'm determined to ignore the quivering tennis ball behind me. Name: Tiny. Level: 12 core. Might: 154. Toughness: 42. Cunning: 7. Will: 15. HP: 84 84ths. MP: 210 210ths. Skills: Expert Ape Boxing Level 3. Brutal Uppercut Level 2. Enhanced Leap Level 3. Smash Level 5. Advanced Athletics Level 1. Grappling Level 5. Potent Crushing Blows Level 4. Fancy Feet Level 4. Advanced Dash Level 2. Mutations: Overwhelming Explosive Enhanced Musculature +10. Iron Bones +5. Springy Impact Legs +10. Piercing Heightened Sonic Enhancer +5. Compressing Lightning Mana Affinity Gland +5. Compressing Lightning Mana Affinity Gland +5. Energy Conversion Gland +4. Species: Dire Lightning Storm Kong. Skill points: 15. Biomass: 3. Things are looking good. He's way stronger than he was before he started spending his points properly. Just look at some of these powerful sounding upgrades. Overwhelming Explosive Enhanced Musculature. That sounds destructive. Actually, just looking at him, he seems more built than before. Not in a rippling muscle sort of way, but more in a solid, sheer size sort of way. His shoulders and arms are definitely a size larger than they were before. I'm guessing he had to upgrade his bones just to stop them snapping like twigs when he throws a punch. Overall, I'm pleased with his choices. I'm especially impressed he followed my advice and took the same upgrade for both lightning mana glands. Naturally, it may have been more optimal to take different upgrades for each to increase versatility, but I figured Tiny would just get confused. Better to find one that works well and use it for both. I think he mainly took that advice, so he didn't have to think so much. I like the compressing mutation as a choice as well. Tinkering around, I worked out that it applies a mild compression to the mana inside the gland, increasing the potency of the mana but slowing its recovery speed. Since he has the conversion gland already, he doesn't have to worry about that so much and can enjoy more potent lightning for free. Okay then. Vibrant is still sleeping for the moment. I'll head topside to alert people as to our absence, and then we'll be off. Chapter 211 Farewell Surface. How long will you be gone for? Enid asks worriedly. As long as it takes to remove the threat, I reply. This is why I don't like coming up here to the human camp. No sooner did I appear than people started gathering and pointing. Then the priest came at a run, his face flushed with excitement, and began exhorting the people to pay their respects to me. In a flash I had people raising their hands or kneeling nearby as I nervously waited for Enid to show up. I'm thankful the crowd maintained a respectful distance from me. It seems their fear of dungeon monsters isn't completely gone. Do you have any idea what is actually causing these monsters to attack the surface? She asks. I'm not sure. I have a few suspicions, but I don't exactly know what we are up against. The colony, and by extensions you humans, are not safe while the expanse below us continues to send out these monsters. They need to be removed. Enid frowns as she ponders my words. Why am I even here? I could have just spoken to the queen and then disappeared underground. Nobody here in the camp would have been the wiser. It isn't as if they see me very often, I'm almost always underground already. I guess Enid herself has been helpful and respectful. I don't really have any reason to keep her in the dark. Since this expedition has a direct impact on their own safety, I suppose it doesn't hurt to tell them. Just give me a little space, people. The people here seem remarkably well disposed towards ant monsters. Is that safe? I'm forced to ask as a child attempts to sneak forward and touch me only to be snatched back by an adult. Enid looks at me oddly for a moment before replying. You and your colony have kept these people safe on several occasions. The only reason we have been able to settle here and start making a life for ourselves again is that you and your colony are here, taming the land and protecting us. Of course, we are grateful. With Bane here, that gratitude is only getting more ingrained. Damn priest. I'll need to have words with him at some point, but for now, I'm worried he may just take it as some sort of divine visitation. The guy is just odd. I bit his arm off. How did he end up such a fervent supporter? Enid hesitates before speaking again. There are a lot of valuable resources that can be extracted from an expanse. I was a merchant before, and I know the value of many things that can be found in the dungeon. If you see something that looks special, bring it to me, and I can tell you about it. I'll think about it. Other than biomass and monster cores, what else does the colony require? On the off chance that something useful can be found down there, I might keep this in mind. Still, in my mind, it's far more likely to be helpful to the humans than it is to us. After a few more words, I bid Enid goodbye and carefully back myself up and leave. The people reluctantly part to let me through, the priest's voice raising to an even higher crescendo before I manage to disappear out of sight. Somehow, not being able to hear exactly what he's saying makes it feel worse. Safely back the nest, I feel much more comfortable. My people. It doesn't take long to explain the situation to Mother. As always, she expresses concern for my safety but encourages me to do what is best for the family. Naturally, this ant doesn't let his family down. No chance. Farewells handled, Tiny gathers the still slumbering Vibrant unexpectedly gently in one massive paw and Chrysalis hops onto my back. Time to depart. I'm feeling exciting for the upcoming challenge but at the same time a little nervous. We are throwing ourselves into the great unknown in order to protect the colony from harm. Something about it just makes my ant heart sing. Going to have to watch out for this feeling in case it motivates me to do something stupid. I get up to enough of that on my own. At any rate, there isn't anyone else in the colony who could handle this level of danger, so it has to me and the crew. In order to ensure we don't miss any waves, we take the long way down, sweeping the tunnels clean and using the creatures we find to get a little extra XP in the bank before we get to the expanse. If we can level up even one skill by 1 point, it might be helped by more than we expect. To this end, I use my new bite attack, Ripping Bite, exclusively. This ends up as some messy combats. Chrysalis seems to approve, but I personally aren't as much of a fan. At least the skill is accruing experience. In this way it takes us a number of hours to reach the expanse, deep below the surface. When we approach, Vibrant finally begins to show signs of stirring from her slumber. Her body has undergone a number of changes during the journey, including a rather dramatic increase in size, at last. I can't wait to take a look at her status and see what she decided to choose. As we post up outside the marsh expanse, I decide to put Chrysalis on guard duty whilst the rest of us open up the shortcut, clear out a small section of tunnel and nestle down for a short break. We need our wits about us for this next test. If Vibrant is going to be fighting alongside us, I want to make sure she's got the right stuff after evolving. It doesn't take long for her to wake up and regain her normal energy. Hi senior. How long did I sleep? Well, I'd say it was. Wow. Where are we? Did we move somewhere? Yes. Tiny carried you. We came down. Thanks Tiny. I wasn't heavy, was I? She rushes over to Tiny, tapping him vigorously with her antennae. The big ape just looks down at her for a moment before reaching out with one big finger to poke her on top of her head. Hey. Hee hee. You're the best Tiny. ... Just come over here for a moment, would you? I grate out. Full of beans, she bounces over to me and stops, still managing to wiggle from one foot to the other as she awaits my instructions. No matter how far she evolves, I don't think her high energy level is ever going to change. I want to take a look at your core and see what your stats are like. Is that okay? I ask. Sure. Alright then. Bringing my antennae forward, it's time for core surgery once more. After a bit of fiddling about, I put together her status. Name. Vibrant. Level. 1 core. Might. 52. Toughness. 38. Cunning. 25. Will. 22. HP. 76/76. MP. 110/110. Skills. Advanced Digging Level 3. Advanced Acid Shot Level 6. Grip Level 4. Crushing Bite Level 5. Advanced Dash Level 2. Exoskeleton Defense Level 3. Stamina Level 2. Piercing Bite Level 4. Leap Level 2. Mutations. Enhanced Reflective Exoskeleton +10. Savage Mandibles +5. Accelerated Legs +5. Focused Eyes +5. Foresight Antennae +5. Burning Acid Gland +5. Widened Command Aura Formica +5. Frequent Explosive Energy Gland +5. Pheromone Language Gland +5. Slow Release Regeneration Gland +5. Inner Carapace Plating. Speed Aura Gland. Species. Major Soldier Formica. Skill Points. 6. Biomass. 5. What the heck is this? Her physical stats are already higher than mine. And by so much. Chapter 212 Assault begins. The new evolution has certainly seen a massive rise in Vibrant's stats. And some of her organs look incredibly unique. The command organ. Did she get that from being a special ant from birth? Gah, I should have investigated her core ages ago. That's what I get for not being curious enough. How do you feel, Vibrant? Great. She cheers. I have to say, she's not so little anymore, almost the same size as I am. The only reason I would be bigger is because I used the shortcut method of raising my might stat quickly by packing on more size rather than condensing the muscle, which increases strength without increasing size. My guess is that Vibrant has taken a much more balanced approach and therefore has much more power squeezed into a smaller body. Looking at her skills and upgrades, it's clear the direction that Vibrant has been taking. Physical strength. Hardy defense. Looks like she picked up an aura gland during her most recent evolution. Speed naturally, being Vibrant. Looks like she'll be taking the path of pouring her mana into fueling a range of aura glands rather than using it to directly fuel magic. I should look at recommending that path to Tiny actually. The lightning mana he has is put to good use, but all the raw MP sitting in his core doesn't do anything whilst his lightning glands are topped off. He'd be more effective in a fight if he had somewhere to put that energy. I'll have to think on it. Due to his low intelligence, I'm worried about Tiny's future evolution paths. Every time he's evolved, he's lost cunning. If it continues down that path, he's going to wind up an extremely well-muscled, bat-faced vegetable. Well, you're probably strong enough stats-wise to fight in front line. I muse. Yay. I can fight with Chrysalis. The no longer little ant cheered with delight, her antennae wiggling in the air uncontrollably. I could only be pleased for her pure enthusiasm. As exhausting as her seemingly infinite energy could be, she was as pure as a diamond compressed from snow made of glass. You'll need to be careful. I warn her. Nibble at the edges, don't go straight on. You're fast and reasonably tanky, but you can't take the horde face on. If you get in trouble, pop your healing gland straight away, don't save it. We can get you to safety and let it recharge before you need to go it again. Yep, the still wiggling ant exclaimed. She's doing her best to listen to my advice, but her energy is just way too high right now. Sigh. I'll have to remind her again later. Hopefully she won't do anything too stupid in her excitement. Tiny, Chrysalis, Vibrant will be joining you on the front lines for the attack. Try to keep an eye out and keep her safe. I want her on the edges of the fight and not in the middle. If she gets buried in the melee, try and get her out. Her. Tiny grunted affirmatively. Of course, master. No harm shall come to her, Chrysalis declared with confidence. I'd be more assured if you could actually see her, Chrysalis. Maybe she could keep a tentacle on Vibrant or something. I'm sure it'll work out. Alright everyone, it's time to form up for the attack. Tiny in the front, Chrysalis with me and Vibrant on the flank. Our mission is complete subjugation. All crocs must be handbags or tasteful jackets by the time we are done. Nothing too out there. I'm fashion conservative. The others look at me strangely. What is a jacket, master? Explain it to me and I shall prepare 1,000 for you this day. Chrysalis cries. I should give up on the jokes. My talent is wasted on this room. Just kill all crocs. They are our primary target. If we remove them all, I think the wave attacks on the colony will stop. Okay. Vibrant says, almost shivering out of her carapace with excitement. Chrysalis wiggles her way onto my back before retracting her tentacles and entering her deceptive, innocent tennis ball mode. Tiny eagerly takes his place in the front, already sparking with anticipation and thumping his chest occasionally, trying to contain his energy. The marsh is going to be expecting what's coming. The oppressive aura is still here, bearing down on us with full force. But we are stronger than before, motivated to protect the colony. I don't care what sort of monster sits in the middle of this expanse, suffocating the area with its baleful aura and sucking in the monsters. I have a few tricks up my carapace that should fix its little red wagon. Full of motivation and gusto, we depart our little hidey hole and advance into the marsh expanse. Before us, the lush green of the vibrant plant life stretches as far as the eye can see, from one side of the expanse to the other. The hillocks of sodden earth that rise out of the dark waters look like moss-encrusted tortoise shells, covered in vibrant flowers and the occasional tree. Overhead, the tall mangrove-like trees, with their enormous webbed roots, spread a wide canopy. Half-glimpsed shadows can be seen shifting about on the broad green leaves here and there. This right here. This will all belong to the family. Chapter 213 Contact. The marsh expanse is still teeming with monstrous life. I can see monsters creeping out of connected tunnels, making their way deeper into the recesses in order to meet up with whatever is compelling their behavior. Even without the steady trickle of captive beasts, there is plenty of stuff to fight around us. The ever-present, ever-hungry flora dots the mounds and rises out of the waters regularly. The plants don't seem to want to eat each other much, but they are always waiting for a juicy meal to wander past, ready to fall into their clutches. Then there are the crocs. Lounging there and there, yawning mightily with their enormous jaws, the croca beasts, titan crocs and beyond can be seen almost everywhere. Never too many in one place, but little posses of 3 or 4, wading through the waters or lying on the raised earth. I think there's more of them here than the last time we came. Or maybe they are gathering on this side since we raised a ruckus last time. At any rate, they haven't seemed to have spotted us. I think the best course of action is to lure them into the tunnel group by group, keep the combat out of sight so we don't draw the lot of them down on our heads at once. Nice and steady, that's the play. So why is Tiny over there punching a titan croc in the face? Damn it. Let's go. Move quickly to support Tiny. Chrysalis. Don't let him get surrounded and try not to get flamethrowered. I cry as I rush forward. This stupid ape. How could I forget his habits so quickly? Last time we were here I was pleased by his self-control and ability to control his seemingly endless hunger for battle. The reality is he was unsettled, even a little intimidated, by the oppressive aura that hangs over this expanse. How did I expect a maniacal, famously thick battle addict to react to his first taste of fear? An emotion that he probably hadn't felt in his entire life. After taking out his frustration on smaller and weaker, unsatisfying foes and getting a power buff from taking the time to actually increase the level of his skills, not to mention the massive boost he received from finally mutating to over +5. Now he's back, large and in charge, and he couldn't wait to punch some face in. So he didn't. The second he laid eyes on a croca, the urge to redeem himself in a battle of old-fashioned fisticuffs must have been irresistible. He didn't get far. The closest group of croca beasts was within 100 meters. When they saw the giant ape eagerly flinging himself forward, swinging from tree branches like a demented, overweight Tarzan, they roused themselves to fight. Claws out and jaws agape, they met Tiny's charge with all the fury they could muster. Fists ablaze with light, Tiny smashed their faces in within 10 seconds and then stood pounding his chest as he roared out a challenge to the expanse as a whole. ... Because of course he would. When we rush up to his side, Tiny is still bellowing his challenge, and it's safe to say he has drawn a fair bit of attention. All around us, small gangs of crocs are staring with undisguised hostility at my pets and I. I'm quietly confident even the plants are giving us a full dose of the stink eye, even though they don't have eyes. ... I think I'm feeling a headache coming on. Actually, you know what? Who cares? Instead of chipping away at the enemy tactically over an extended period of time, this stratagem has little more chest hair. I'm with you, Tiny. Bring it on. I immediately kick my sub-brains into gear and get them weaving up a water transformation construct. It shouldn't take long for them to get it set up and pumping out water-attributed mana. If any of these monsters decides to start spitting flame at us, I want to be ready. Get ready, folks, they're coming in. I cry. 4 small groups of crocas begin to advance towards us, curiously untouched by local plant monsters. Counting rapidly, I size up our opponents. 10 croca beasts and 2 titan crocs. Not even a warm-up. These low-tiered monsters can't hope to hold a candle to us. It's what will come next that worries me. Come on, brains. Get kicking. The monsters swagger towards us, their toothy grins and grasping claws screaming confidence. It's almost strange. I'm starting to think these guys haven't been challenged in this marsh for some time. Have they become the local bully boys? Leathery skinned, super ugly mafioso. Gonna get a rude awakening now. Chrysalis. Eat. Of course, master. With her tremor sense, Chrysalis is able to detect the subtle vibrations of movement through the ground and air. As the crocs flex their way towards us, eagerly anticipating the meal to come, Chrysalis slowly lifts herself from my back on thin tendrils and drifts forwards. Such an innocent-looking little ball of endless despair. Who could possibly imagine that this tennis ball-sized black orb would contain so much terror? Certainly not the crocs. Tiny, leave it to Chrysalis, you've had some fun already. In response to my order, Tiny frowns sadly and kicks the dirt. He hasn't had nearly enough fighting yet, but I know his games. It isn't possible for him to get enough fighting in the first place. There'll be more soon, bud. Keep that engine warmed up. The big ape nods his head, still looking sad, but the fire in his eyes is burning bright. Some of the crocs approach through the water, their long tails sinuously trailing behind as they adeptly swim, whilst others move from island to island, gradually closing the distance at a slow walk. The smaller croca beasts lead from the font, whilst the 2 titan crocs follow from behind, dwarfing their lesser evolved allies as they move. As soon as one scaly foot lands close enough to Chrysalis, she acts. Unfurling herself with blinding speed, tentacles begin to lash out in all directions, peeling out of her body endlessly until there are dozens of them grasping towards the closest foes. By the time the croca beast realizes what is happening, it's already too late. Once the first tentacle latches onto its leg, its fate is sealed. More tentacles lash out, slashing through the air like whips and striking the beast, coiling tightly around it. Snarling viciously, the monster tries to resist, pulling and slashing at the inky black shadow flesh with its claws, but it is to no avail. Razor-sharp barbs emerge from the tentacles and begin their dark work. Knowing what Chrysalis' upgrades can do, I'm not entirely sure I'm prepared to watch what's about to happen. Stay away from Master, you vile beast. Chrysalis roars. Then she engages her ripping barbs. Where once her barbs would dig and tear into her victim, now they can move, shifting back and forth at high speeds over a distance of a few inches. In effect, I guess you could say it's like a chainsaw. Slack-jawed with fear, the other croca beasts watch as their struggling compatriot undergoes what we'll only describe as the Chrysalis experience. She'll probably get a few more levels of dismember from this. When it's all said and done, her main body inflates and unfolds again to reveal her cavernous maw. The no longer struggling croca is unceremoniously dropped within, and as a ghastly crunching sound emerges from her main body, those inky black tentacles begin reaching out once more. Chapter 214 Battle begins. The smaller croca beasts look quite apprehensive to be approaching the grasping tentacles of death, but with their larger cousins pressing them from behind, they have little choice but to continue to approach. Chrysalis has spread her net of tentacles in a 10-meter arc towards the approaching foes, her tremor sense giving her some idea of the positioning of the enemy. The Titan crocs bringing up the rear snap their jaws and bark out a brief message to their lesser kin, who grit their oversized teeth and rush forward as one. It seems they've grown tired of the slow measured approach and want to surround Chrysalis with overwhelming numbers. 9 of the beasties are rushing towards her now, claws extended and long crocodile jaws open wide for a taste of my pet. Fortunately Chrysalis, the smartest of my core children, has foreseen this situation. She was already a complete beast at fighting a horde of enemies, but with her new mutations that ability has only been intensified. Those jet black grasping tentacles react quickly to the pounding feet of the approaching crocs. Before the monsters can even swipe their claws, the tentacles begin to divide, splitting into thinner limbs that then divide some more, creating innumerable appendages that slither through the air towards the hapless crocs. Just as they were about to commence their attack, claws extended and saliva dripping from their agape jaws, the crocs become lashed with hundreds of tentacles. Due to her upgraded shadow flesh and tentacle manipulation skill, Chrysalis has become quite adept at the manipulation of her limbs, and the strange stuff that makes up her body has only grown tougher and more flexible as she mutates it. The crocs don't stand a chance. The moment they are entwined in those razor-thin tentacles, their hope is lost. They struggle and roar, but the shadow flesh proves to be resistant to their feeble struggles. The tentacles slowly fuse together again, thickening, until they manifest the barbs once more. With a horrid whine, the ripping begins, and it isn't long before croc after croc is being deposited into the mouth of the ever-hungering murder ball. That is just so rough, every time I see it. Tiny, I want you to take on the Titan croc on the right. Vibrant, you go support him. Chrysalis, you and I can take out the one on the left. I command my troops. Roger. Vibrant shouts. Huh, Tiny grunts happily, the fire burning in his eyes. Of course, Master. Chrysalis cries with glee. The two giant crocs seem to be having second thoughts about their previous confidence. Watching their allies be shredded and chewed up by a single ball of ink will have that sort of effect, I suppose. It's too late to back out now because we are on the charge. My transformation construct is ready and primed, churning out a steady stream of water mana which I begin to weave into spells. I don't actually think Chrysalis or Tiny will actually need help to dispose of these Titan crocs, but it feels nice for everyone to get involved. We have a long fight ahead after all, we all need get warmed up. Unable to escape, the two six-legged crocs rear back to their full height and roar in unison. The low rumble of their cry rattles the air and all around us crocs turn to focus intently on the goings-on. With my superior vision I can already see a few slipping into the water and making their way towards us. Oh boy. I think it's on now. With no reason to hold back, I begin pouring my mental energy into spell shaping without holding back. I need to make sure my allies don't suffer in this fight. Tiny is the first to reach his enemy, leaping high and crashing down with a titanic strike. A narrow miss. His light enveloped fist plunges down and the ground beneath our feet shakes with that shattering impact. The croc seems to realize just how lucky it was in that moment it dodged, staring wide-eyed at the ape before it, failing to capitalize on this moment of weakness. Vibrant takes advantage of its distraction and dashing in to chomp it on the leg viciously, tearing into the limb and causing the beast to growl in pain. On my side I fling a few water bolts at the croc, staggering it with the sheer kinetic force of the water smashing into it. Water sprays everywhere from the blasts, drizzling down onto Chrysalis, who completely ignores it as she walks towards her opponent on her several tentacles. This is her new skill, the tentacle walk. It may not seem like much, but she certainly is moving with much more ease and grace than she was before. Whereas before she basically dragged herself along, now she glides with deadly purpose. Before her main body, her limbs are already seeking, reaching and grasping towards her worried opponent, who is only just recovering from the impact of my water bolts. Hastily the croc throws open his jaw and unleashes a jet of orange flame. Searing heat washes over me as the flames are turned onto Chrysalis at point-blank range. Fortunately she was forewarned of this danger. As soon as she feels the heat burning her shadow flesh, she retracts her limbs as quickly as possible, folding them into her main body to protect the more vulnerable parts of her body. This was what I instructed her to do. Shadow beasts seem to have something of a weakness to fire, so I wanted Chrysalis to be able to limit the damage she might take in battle with the Titan crocs. But I don't simply intend to let her sit there and take the flamethrower, that would be madness. Water cannon. A solid stream of water materializes above my head and streaks through the air before smacking straight into the croc's mouth. Got him. The flames are almost immediately extinguished as the croc slams its mouth shut, steam leaking out from between its teeth. Go Chrysalis. I shout. I keep the water cannon trained on the dumb croc as it uses its large upper arms to shield its face from my relentless water attack. If he opens that mouth again, he's gonna get another dose. Freed from the pesky flames, RinoZ slashes out with her tentacles, attaching herself to the croc in moments. With the limbs undivided, they are thick and powerful. Before the croc can even scream, they begin to twist and rend the beast, dragging it bodily towards the waiting maw, bristling with enormous fangs. Well, she needs to heal up a little, I guess. On the other side, Tiny has beaten their foe into a pulp with his fists as Vibrant ran interference, nibbling on legs and being a general pest to the large croc. Our first battle has ended in glorious victory, but I can see more of the monsters making their way over, including a few new variants I've not fought before. It's time to take on the real troops. Chapter 215, The New Croc on the Block. Eat up, gang. Not long until the next wave is here, I warn my troops. RinoZ has already eaten, of course, stuffing her face with 10 crocas and an entire Titan croc. If I get my hands on that dimensional stomach during my next evolution, I swear I'll dance for a week straight. I'm so envious. Also, where the heck is my food? I'll have to settle for nibbling on some this next group coming our way. With my omnidirectional eyes, I can see that there are crocs approaching from multiple sides. Having seen us shred the weaker ones so comfortably, the smaller croca beasts are staying back, cowering behind their more powerful cousins. Titan crocs, the massive, lumbering six-legged beasts, are the bulk of what is coming our way, but they certainly aren't the biggest. Mixed amongst them are clearly more highly evolved children of Garalosh. Even larger than the Titan crocs, will I have to rename them? Their dark green-scaled bodies ripple with strength as they ponderously move on their 6 limbs. The larger legs and somewhat prehensile arms sport vicious claws, and their long jaws still bristle with razor-sharp-looking teeth. Where they different from their slightly more diminutive cousins is firstly the eyes. Just in front of their regular eyes they have an extra set which gleam red with some sort of energy. Secondly, their tails. Right at the base of their tail it splits into 2, both tails seemingly shifting independently of the other. It kind of makes me wonder what was going on in Garalosh's head when they designed these evolutions for her children. More isn't necessarily better, you lousy croc. Just slap an extra set of eyes and tail on them and call it quits. How lazy is that? All the effort and thought I poured into shaping the new generation of workers is being mocked by this slack effort. Wait. No. Don't judge too quickly, Anthony. The Titan crocs had the surprising inclusion of their fire mana gland. There's a chance that these guys will have something interesting going on besides just an increase in size and new tails. I have to say, the crocs look right at home in this environment. The lush greenery, dark brown earth and muddy waters feels like the perfect backdrop for these croc monsters as they slide through the water, mostly submerged, or lumber between the trees. I can see why they like this expanse, it suits them. Too bad I found it. Soon all of this land will belong to the colony. Muahahaha. Tiny and Vibrant, you guys take on that side together. Begin with an acid bombardment, Vibrant then nib at the flanks like we discussed. Tiny, don't hold back, I want to see some sparks, you understand. Yep, I'll get 'em. Vibrant declares cheerfully, snapping her mandibles at the approaching enemy. Tiny grunts as sparks begin to crackle across his body. Okay, RinoZ, you and me on this side. Watch out for more fire. We don't know what these bigger crocs can do, so we need to be careful and go full force from the start. Don't hold out on me. Never. Master. That's what I like to hear. As soon as I'm finished talking, I begin drawing out my gravity mana and compressing it. I'm not going to play around with these unknown evolutions. I'll take one of them out before they can even start the fight. Flipping control of the water mana construct to one of my sub-brains, I task the other with feeding me a steady supply of the purple gravitational mana from my own internal supply. Within my body the energy pulses vibrantly and begins to flow out, responding to the direction of my thoughts. Next to the mana gland, my core glows brightly, already recharging the mana I had spent on water bolts earlier. As the gravitational energy is delivered to me, I start shaping it, crunching it down, pressing with the weight of my consciousness, then beginning to outline the structure of my spell. All of the hours of practice I've put into this task are bearing fruit as the spell takes shape fluidly. It's still hard, like painting a 3-dimensional masterpiece with only my thoughts, but my mind isn't what it used to be. Almost double my normal human cunning means my mind is able to move in ways it simply wasn't possible to do before. More precise, more powerful, my mind slides the compressed mana into place, then starts powering the spell. This one is a special spell, a new trick I worked on during the last week. I tested the spell on a few monsters and was entirely disappointed with the effect. For the mana invested and the difficulty of the spell to construct, I'd hoped for a lot more. The spell shape is a double-layered sphere. A small, dense ball of gravitational energy, inscribed with arcane sigils that slowly rotates within a shell made from an outer sphere. The inner sphere is hard to make, but the outer one. Yikes. Suffice to say, it looks pretty impressive floating in my mind. During testing, I learned how to fire the spell. It essentially manifests in front of my face and flies forward in a straight line. Once it impacts the target, the energy contained within the inner sphere flows to the outer one and the target becomes surrounded by a gravity field that pulls them in all directions. It's nasty. But other than making monsters uncomfortable and inhibiting their movement, the spell didn't do a whole lot of damage. Then I thought about the forceful version. What would be different with the powered up spell? It's really nasty. I call this spell of gruesome death, the gravity sphere. Bam. With a surge of will, I manifest the spell and fire it towards the closest double croc, so named for their new eyes and tail. The beast didn't expect a spell to come flying at it from such a harmless looking ant monster and failed to dodge. I feel sorry for you, buddy. The spell takes effect immediately, the outer sphere expanding to encompass the entire form of the croc in crackling purple mana as the energy from the inner sphere is discharged. Then the horrific pull of gravity begins to exert itself on the monster from every direction. The creature roars with rage as the monsters around it step aside, unsure what is happening. I wonder how long he'll be able to resist it. At least that's one croc taken out of the fight. Let's go, RinoZ. Chapter 216 Magical N. As my first victim languishes within my spell that is quite literally trying to pull it apart in every direction, I turn my attention to the rest of the monsters coming our way. So far there are 6 Titan crocs and 3 of the larger double crocs who need dealing with. Come to me, you leathery chumps. I'm not holding back this time. I vengefully command my sub-brain to pass more gravitational mana to me and begin swiftly weaving together ordinary gravity bolts. With the relative ease of construction, the spell leaves me enough awareness to turn and present my back zone towards my foes. Have a taste of this, you darn crocs. Pow, pow, pow. Quick as a flash, I fire off 3 blasts of my own special brand of acid before turning around again and unleashing my spell. The acid arcs through the air towards the crocs. They are on alert this time and 2 of the shots miss, but the spell slams home into one of the Titan crocs, who immediately feels the weight of the world fall on its shoulders, slowing its movement to a crawl. Plenty more where that came from. RinoZ, get into a defensive position in front of me. I'll throw spell until they reach us. Understood, master. No nonsense. In the heat of battle, my faithful pet glides gracefully in front of me and rapidly deploys her web of tentacles. The monsters will have to get past her if they want to reach me, and I don't think she'll allow that. Gravity bolt. With my current mind, I can whip one of these out in just seconds. The second is already prepared and on its way. This time I target one of the double crocs. I want to see what these beefier monsters are made of. As they draw closer, the spells become more difficult to dodge, and this one strikes home easily. The target looks angry to have been struck with my spell, and when the gravity descends, it unleashes a roar of frustration, the anger rumbling out from deep in its chest. But it keeps coming. Slower than before, thankfully, but still coming. It appears these monsters have enough might to overcome the normal gravity bolt and not suffer too much. I won't bother spending more of that on them then. Weighing them down and restricting their mobility is nice, but I can do a hell of a lot better with my time, and every second counts. I've been weaving another gravity bolt even as I watched the effect of the last one, and it is quickly ready. Fire. Another Titan croc feels the pressure fall onto it, pulling its feet down to the ground, and it struggles to overcome the weight. The crocs are moving at full speed now, the ground shuddering under the impact of their massive feet. Overhead, the trees shake and shiver. The monsters moving through the water shift into high gear, spraying water as they pass, their jaws opening wide to reveal their surprisingly pink tongues nestled between rows of razor-sharp teeth. I've got time for maybe 2 more spells before they hit us. Maybe I can buy us some more time though. Gravity mana begin to pour out of my gland at the behest of my sub-brain, and I bring forth the full power of my prodigious mind to compress it down and weave it into the shape of another new spell. I have to focus hard on this one, as I haven't had enough practice with it to be able to shape it easily. I can almost feel steam pour out of my ears as my mind starts to overheat. Within my mind, I compress mana and build up the structure of my spell at dizzying speeds, loops and whirls, spheres and lines, layer on layer taking shape as the seconds tick by. The crocs thunder towards us, emerging from the water just a few meters away and charging forward. On. Done. Gravity bola. Forceful mana has reached level 7. Precise shooting has reached level 3. Ha! It's nice to fight some tier 3 monsters for a change. The difference in XP is really showing. I can't wait to eat. The gravity bola materializes before me and flings forward in the shape of a wide line. By angling it just so I manage to clip the crocs emerging from the water as well as those running overland. Only one Titan croc is able to avoid being hit by the spell as it faces forward, shrinking in width as it passes. The crocs who are hit seem almost confused as they notice no effect from the spell, but unbeknownst to them there is a sliver of energy that ties to them to the bola as it travels. The further the spell goes, the smaller it becomes until it has shrunk to a single point and becomes still. At this point the spell takes effect. With a tremendous pulse of gravitational energy, the crocs feel themselves being pulled backwards towards the spell. They jerk as the pulse yanks them backwards a few steps. The massive beasts freeze for a moment, then being to walk forward, only to be yanked back by another pulse of energy. The gravity bola. The normal version isn't much, but the forceful version comes out wider and the pull is much, much stronger. Phew. That took a lot out of me. Thankfully my gravitational gland is so deep, I still have plenty in the tank. Angry and frustrated, the double crocs push forward until their muscles creak and pop, the hulking monsters straining against the spell. The closest one opens wide and flames flicker within its mouth. Yikes. I hastily begin spinning up a spell. The croc leans forward and unleashes a huge ball of fire that races towards us, the fire bursting out of its mouth with a tremendous roar. Master. Chrysalis questions. She can probably feel the heat. The temperature is certainly rising fast. I'm on it. I grate out as my brains work together at light speed to put together my spell. Done. Water bolt. The dense ball of water flies forward and impacts against the fire just before it strikes us. PSSSHHHHH. With an audible thump the spells collide and an explosion of steam bursts out, the two substances consuming each other in an instant. Damn it. I can't see a thing. I hastily whip up another water bolt and hold it as I peer through the steam. My antennae start going crazy as my heat detection lights up like a firework. Yes, I get it. There is heat everywhere. What have you got, Chrysalis? They're coming. She cries. The steam has no effect on her vision, since she doesn't have any. Chapter 217 Feast of Croc. What is experience? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Ever since the system descended on our world, scholars, priests, and wise ones all over the world have sought to understand it. Class progressions have been mapped out, skill trees have been researched and codified endlessly. Many aspects of the system are thoroughly understood and form the curriculum of schools all around the world. The fundamental underpinning aspects of the system, however, remain elusive and resistant to study. There are many theories on the topic of experience that range from reasonable to absurd, but the topic is one that resists study as it is so intangible. The system at no point quantifies experience in a number, making it impossible to ascertain just how much is gained from any one activity. Estimates can and have been made, by having two subjects of the same level attempt to reach the next by different means, one through study and one through combat, for example, and educated guesses can be achieved through such means, but just what experience is, remains as distant a piece of understanding as ever. There are those who believe, somewhat mystically, that experience taken from a living thing, a monster, is the purest form, the true intention of the system, and any other source is secondary to this. The Church of the Path has long extolled the view that nothing truly dies so long as its experience is absorbed by another living creature, that the essence is preserved and made part of a stronger whole. This seems harmless enough when applied to monsters, but should one extend that dangerous logic to the killing of other people, an activity that also awards XP, some of the dark rumors that swirl around that faith, particularly in its early years, begin to gain credence. Experience of the System, Origins, Myths and Legends, by Giovanni the Faithless, from the Secret Library of the Path. Behind me I can see that the fight is raging between Tiny, Vibrant and a host of crocs. Without my magnificent magic to deter the beasts, they have been able to swarm forwards and engage Tiny in a vicious melee. Unfortunately for the crocs, right next to the ape isn't exactly the safest place one could hope to be. Lightning crackles along Tiny's torso, zapping nearby foes and discharging through his hands with every punch. With each swing of his arms a croc is sent reeling. Even the double crocs, large as they are, cannot withstand the strength of those fists. Like me, Tiny is a tier 4 monster, not to mention the beneficiary of multiple special evolutions. His strength is absurdly high, and thanks to having actually spent some biomass and skill points, his combat effectiveness is only climbing. The double crocs are tier 3 monsters, and there is little chance they have received the level of evolution, or had access to the wealth of biomass, that Tiny has been able to enjoy. I spoil my pets. What can I say? At any rate, despite being heavily outnumbered, the big lug is managing to hold his own, smashing away crocs with wild swings whenever they surround him. He's taking some damage though, his defense not up to the task of fending off those jaws and claws. Vibrant is sticking to instructions, and after bombarding the foe with acid from range, she has stuck to a hit and run tactics. Whenever a croc runs directly at her, she turns and races to the other side of Tiny, putting the melee between herself and her would-be opponent. She really is fast. She would leave me in the dust, even when dashing. Once out of sight and out of mind, she charges forward and viciously deploys her various biting skills, chomping away at legs or arms, occasionally the odd torso. Whenever they get sick of her nibbling, the monsters turn and swipe at her, their claws raking along her carapace, occasionally penetrating far enough to draw blood. True to directions, she immediately backs off, healing up and waiting for another opportunity to strike. I wonder just how often she can use that healing gland. On my side, Chrysalis and I are still contending with the odd fireball as our opponents struggle to overcome my forceful gravity. Bola. Nifty spell this one. Even monsters as large and physically powerful as the crocas aren't able to advance once I've tagged them with this beauty. One Titan croc managed to evade the spell, but he has unfortunately fallen into the clutches of Chrysalis' tentacles. You dare to approach my master, vile beast. She seems mad. The fate of the croc is not good, to say the least. Don't eat them all, Chrysalis. We need to save some food for everyone, especially the double croca. Understood, master. Beyond the immediate surrounding, the environment is still shrouded with steam. I can't quite see the crocs, their hulking bodies reduced to mere shadows with the obstruction, but similarly, they can't see us. Doesn't stop them from hurling fire at us though. Chrysalis, fire coming. Damn it. Blindly throwing fire in our direction is still dangerous enough. The flames the double crocs contain within is more potent than that inside their smaller cousins. This is going to get rough. Around me the fireballs explode as I turn my mind inwards, racing to complete another spell. The air begins to roast us immediately, Chrysalis suffering more than I do. Grr. I should have seen this coming. Hurry up, Anthony. Get this spell done. Within my mind the water mana dances and glides as all of my minds are purposed to directing the mana into a familiar shape. FWOOSH. More fireballs ignite through the steam. These crocs have a decent tank of fire. Luckily my spell is ready. Water domain. Expanding outwards with me in the center, a spherical wall of water pushes the flames away. With yet more explosions of the steam, the incoming fireballs smash into my expanding barrier, superheating the liquid and pushing through, but only with a shadow of their previous strength. Nice. I can handle this. Yet more steam billows out and further obstructs our vision. Damn it. I can't see a thing. We can't hang back anymore, Chrysalis. Time to push forward and mess them up. A very damp tentacle death sphere acknowledges my words with her actions and picks her body up and begins to advance, extending a web of tentacles before herself as she advances, completely unaffected by the steam. I pass the maintenance of my water domain, a swirling mass of water then swishes and froths constantly in a 5-meter diameter around me. Cautiously we advance, my sub-minds taking over the maintenance of the water domain and supplying it with a steady stream of water mana. Gradually a shadow looms larger in front of us, a double croc thrashing against the restraint of the gravity bola. The croc is large, far larger than myself, but it certainly doesn't expect us. Chrysalis' seeking limbs creep forward before finally contacting the monster before us. Instantly a number of tentacles snap forward and latch onto the croc, who growls deep at its throat and begins slashing with its claws at the shadow flesh that has attached to it. Oh no you don't, you damned croc. Dashing forward the beast is buffeted by the surging waters of my water domain, knocked off balance and thoroughly saturated. Summoning the energy from within, I open my mandibles wide as they begin to glow. Shattering bite. Crunch. Gar. The double croc reels back in pain. Suffer from my bite, croc. The first of many. Chapter 218 Skirmish Conculsion. More fireballs fly out of the distance and impact against my water domain, sending massive gouts of steam hissing into the air and further reducing visibility. In front of me, buffeted and soaked by the frothing mass of water that makes up my water domain, the double croc lunges forward with its massive jaws. Snap. Yikes. Leaping to the left, I manage to avoid the snapping jaws at the last second. With the foe off balance, I dash forward to bite once. More. Crunch. Shattering bite has reached level 8. Muahahaha. The croc growls furiously, a rumble that comes from deep within its chest and shakes the air with its intensity. The double crocs are almost the same size as tiny when standing on their hind legs, close to 10 feet. Being a little over a meter tall at this point, the damn thing towers over me. My eyes are about level with its knees. Thankfully my shattering bite manifests more than meter away from actual mandibles, increasing the range of my bite attacks considerably. Enough to take a decent chunk out of the monster's side at any rate. Wham! Ouch! A little cocky after my successful bite, and I don't even notice the twin tails sweeping towards me until they smash into my side with tremendous force, sending me flying several meters away. Master, are you all right? Chrysalis cries shrilly. I'm fine. Focus on the fight. Damn beast. I will rend you. I've lost a bit of HP from that strike. The kinetic force of the impact was enough to crack my carapace in several places, but the enhanced diamond is perfect for resisting this sort of damage. Not to mention, a new feeling arises in the damaged sections that brings a smile to my heart. The inner bone plating, a supportive structure that webs the inside of my exoskeleton, begins to excrete a gel-like substance at the site of the damaged portions. Immediately I can feel the tingling feeling of regeneration begin to intensify as the cracks start to knit together. Oh, how I love it when a plan comes together. How's that, you stupid croc? A few minutes and I'll be back to full HP again. The magical tank that is Anthony the Ant shall never be stopped. Being able to repair the damage to my main defense, the carapace, without having to expend my healing gland, is so tasty. Whilst I'm admiring my own incredible wisdom, Chrysalis has gone berserk. She has begun threshing her limbs around one of the croc's legs, the beast being too large for her to effectively wrap the entire thing at once. She has chosen to concentrate her fire on one particular limb. Ah, so this is why she took dismember. Yuck. The beast fall to one side and I can see other shadows growing closer now, their flickering shadows growing nearer through the steam. My water domain continues to swirl around me and I position myself so that the frothing liquid slashes and slams into the croc's face as Chrysalis flicks her limbs to the beast's torso. It seemed like the crocs, as expected, are quite resistant to water spells. Their scaly hides are perfect for sliding through water and provide a decent measure of protection against the kinetic impact of my water spells. Perhaps Garalosh wasn't completely stupid when they designed their children with fire mana glands after all. At least my water magic is working to counter their stupid fireballs, even if the field has been covered in a blanket of steam. I rush forward and begin to chomp away at the hapless double croc. With Chrysalis working her dark magic on its limbs and my own mandibles crunching at it, even a tier 3 croc monster cannot resist for long. You have defeated level 12 Garalosh Bellator. You have gained XP. Before Gandalf has even finished his words, I leap forward and take a bite from the fallen enemy. You have consumed a new source of biomass. Garalosh Bellator, you are awarded 1 biomass. Basic profile of the Garalosh Bellator unlocked. Garalosh Bellator. Garalosh Soldier. Following in the evolutionary footsteps of their progenitor, the Garalosh Soldier is equipped with a more powerful muscular system, increased stamina, intensified flame and double tails. Closing square bracket. Huh. So apparently these Garalosh offspring are basically evolving the same way the original croc monster did. Following in their mother's footsteps. That's interesting, it gives some insight into what Garalosh itself might look like. But I don't have time to worry about that now, we have more offspring to kill. I have to move quickly before my gravity spell wears off completely. I nudge Chrysalis mentally and we dash in the direction I recall seeing the other double croc. Thankfully my memory doesn't fail me and we manage to approach the creature who, despite being buffeted by my water domain, manages to accurately swipe at me with one claw. Screech. The solid bone claw scraped along my pristine diamond carapace and sparks fly, but the claw fails to penetrate through to my soft, fleshy insides. The carapace is triumphant. Death. Chrysalis screams, and a boiling mass of tentacles lash forward and wrap both legs of the double croc. Nice, Chrysalis. I shout and move to follow up on her attack. How? Right from the famed shopping plaza, a blast of acid smacks into the beast's upper chest, immediately sizzling and burning away the scales that cover the croc's torso. Flames begin to flicker around the mouth of the creature, but thanks to my improved rear vision I'm way ahead of it and position myself so that my water domain starts slamming into the croc's face. Haha. You want flamethrower me now? HSSSSSSSSSSSSSS. Apparently yes. Unwilling to hold back the flame, the monster opens wide, blasts the spherical wall of water before it, and even though some of the fire does indeed penetrate my defense, the majority is swallowed by the water and a huge gout of steam blasts the croc right in the face. Yoach. I wonder who has the higher cunning, Tiny or the double croc. I shake my head, I should think so poorly of my own pet. Scalded by this unexpected event, the croc rears back in pain and anger. Get him, Chrysalis. Finish it. Understood. As the uncomfortable sounds of ripping and tearing begin to fill the air, I lunge forward to apply mandibles, pumping some raw mana into them to activate their infused property and greatly increase their cutting power. Chomp. Chomp. No matter how the monster tries to fight back, it's useless. Within Chrysalis typing up and savaging its legs and me tearing into it, the superficial slashes and bites it manages to land on us are not able to inflict serious damage. You have slain level 6 Garrosh soldier. You have gained experience. I feel the forceful gravity bola dissipate, releasing the rest of the crocs to continue their advance, but it's too late, the spell has done its work admirably. Without being able to group together, the larger double crocs have been defeated. In fact, I can also sense that by forceful gravity sphere has dispelled and you have slain level 7 Garrosh soldier. You have gained experience. You achieved level 14, 1 skill point awarded. There you go. Not sure I want to go inspect those remains though. Chapter 219 Expeditious Retria. With the heavy hitter taken out of the equation, there isn't much left to the fight. Chrysalis and I quickly destroy the Titan crocs and rush back to help support Tiny and Vibrant. The giant ape and ant soldier are beaten and bruised but victorious as they lord over their fallen enemies. Tiny is beating his chest and roaring his challenge out to the world whilst Vibrant does a manic, high-speed dance around his ankles. R-A-A-A-A-A-R-R, Tiny bellows. R-A-A ha 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 ha. Vibrant cackles. ... I was right to team these two up. They fit together like peas in a pod. The only problem is, who is the brains of the operation? In the distance there are yet more crocs, huddling together in small posses like leathery hoodlums. For the time being they aren't responding to our provocation, but I'd rather not put their tolerance to the test. For now there aren't any groups within 200 meters, which is roughly how far we've advanced into the expanse. Okay, hold off on the celebration already, you two. I snap. We've won the first skirmish, but there are more to be had. Let's eat quickly and prepare our next move. I don't need to tell them twice. The gang quickly breaks up and we start stuffing our faces full whilst keeping a watchful eye on the surrounding monsters. I myself head directly for the double crocs. It's been some time since I've been able to eat a tier 3 monster of this size and I don't intend to let the opportunity go to waste. Nom nom. There really is a distinct flavor to croc. I think it's growing on me, to be honest. Particularly the tails. Now that I think of it, the double croc evolutionary choices are really making sense to me. Double the tail to eat. Nice. I managed to reap a nice harvest of biomass from the first croc, but as I'm moving towards the second, Chrysalis cries out mentally. Master. I can feel vibrations coming this way, lots of them. I think it's a wave. Oh snap. Everyone back to the tunnels. Go go go. Tiny seems reluctant to move, still shoving huge fistfuls of food into his mouth until his cheeks are puffed out to a ludicrous degree. Tiny. Move your big butt back to the tunnels. Right now. I yell at him even as I activate my dash skills to rush at Chrysalis and throw her onto my back. Heavy. With that maw of hers she can eat 10 times faster than the rest of us, she's so damned heavy already she must have eaten 2 or 3 crocs at least. Tiny cannot refuse my direct command. Unwilling to part with his meal he grabs the body of the double croc he was eating and throws it over his shoulder before dashing and leaping his way back to the tunnel. How greedy. Wish I'd thought of that. At the very least I might have been able to grab a tail. With all possible speed we rush back to the tunnel entrance we used to reach this point and position ourselves defensively. I'd figured that we would encounter a wave or two during our attack on the expanse, and in my mind the worst case scenario would be if we were caught out in the open. The monsters in a wave are low level, without many mutations and generally tier 1 with a few having evolved, generally not much of a threat. But if they were to surround us in the middle of the marsh, where mobility is difficult and there are native monsters who could interfere and get in the way, it could get nasty. Safely retreating to the tunnel that leads up to the colony and effectively blocking it, preventing any monsters from reaching my family and then continuing the assault is by far the best choice. Tiny in front, Chrysalis right behind to support, make sure he doesn't get surrounded. Vibrant, stay behind Chrysalis and move up to support when you can, don't let yourself get caught. I'll stick to the roof. We quickly take our positions and it isn't long until I can see the wave of monsters approaching through the tunnel entrance. They roll through the marsh as a dark mass of shadow beasts, the occasional normal, animalistic monster mixed in. Curiously, They don't seem too interested in feasting on the native monsters in the expanse as they pass, leaving them undisturbed for the most part. I think I see the odd flower monster getting trampled, but nothing seems to go out of its way to kill or eat. This behavior is just so unmonster-like that it's baffling to me. What hold does the creature controlling this expanse have on these monsters? Is it a skill, a mutation, or something to do with their core? I just don't have the knowledge to explain it. Hopefully soon, I will. It doesn't take long for the monsters to reach us. Tiny finally stops snaking on his crock and flings the remaining food behind us, saving it for later, before flexing his fingers as lightning begins to crackle around his body. I myself head towards the ceiling and grip it tightly, drawing on my water transformation construct to stockpile some condensed water mana in preparation for a forceful water cannon. That spell has proven to be the most effective so far at cutting through the shadow beast's strange flesh quickly. Advanced grip has reached level 4. Nice. Grip hasn't leveled in ages. Why now? I guess I haven't been doing a whole of gripping. Where once I almost exclusively traveled on ceilings, I'm more a floor walker now. Somehow that feels a little disappointing to me, as if something of my ant nature is lacking. I guess I walk up and down the colony walls, but that probably does less for XP wise than hanging off a ceiling during a fight. Internally I resolve to hang upside down a bit more as I brace for the incoming wave. The monsters grow larger in our eyes until they crash into us with tremendous momentum. Tiny meets the challenge willingly, his massive fist smashing the first monsters into pass the moment they rush into range. Forceful water cannon. The tunnel is immediately filled with sound of desperate combat as the monsters throw themselves at us like berserkers, mindlessly advancing into our attacks and getting cut down just as quickly. My spell zigs and zags through their ranks, slicing through them without mercy. The spray of water saturates the tunnel and the incoming monsters, who quickly fall prey to Tiny's lightning and fists. Any that reach his sides are snatched up in Chrysalis tentacles and torn to pieces or flung back towards Vibrant, who falls upon them with savage flee, her mandibles swiftly ending the threat. We battle in this way for a full 15 minutes before the wave has expended itself. The tunnel is packed full of biomass, to a ridiculous degree, and we are tired and battered. Tiny in particular has suffered the brunt of the fighting so far, cuts and bruises dot his body as the massive ape catches his breath. Since we are close to the shortcut anyway, I decide that we should stuff our faces, heal up, and deliver the rest of this food to the surface for the colony to pick up before we continue our assault. Chapter 220. Once more into the expanse. After we've made a quick delivery to the surface and we take a little time to rest to aid the digestion. Fighting on a full stomach isn't the best feeling in the world, especially when I've already taken in a special core. The tight, painful feeling has faded in the background by now. I'm sure if that is because my body has successfully accommodated to containing this slightly oversized core, or if I've just gotten used to the pain. I'm still determined to try and take in another before my next evolution. I'm not willing to stay behind on the power curve. To protect my family, I'll take the risk to get every edge I possibly can. To turn a humble worker ant into a monstrous powerhouse, I can't go by the standard road. Maxing out my core and selecting the special evolutions isn't enough for me anymore. If I'm going to run into this Garrulash monster, I feel like I'm going to need every edge I can get my claws on. Just thinking about what that croc could look like makes me nervous enough to clean my antennae before I can settle down. How many evolutions? Tier 5, 6, 7. Mutations would be at what level? Tier 6 would be plus 3-0. I hope my pets and I are strong enough to handle it if that damn beast ever decides to come at the colony. For that reason, we need to take every opportunity to make ourselves stronger. When the new generation is up and running, I'll be a lot more confident in our future. To that end, we have to secure our position as quickly as we can. I've got a week until they hatch. By that time the expanse needs to be tamed and the threat to the colony ended. I reaped 21 biomass from the fighting so far, enough to buy a little something. I instruct everyone to spend up and then settle in to glance through my menu. Thank goodness. With this last feed, I've amassed just enough to take my antennae to plus 10. Would you like to upgrade antennae to plus 10? At this level you may select a mutation advancement from the menu. Awesome. My infrared senses have served me well since purchasing that upgrade. Having more information and more ways to sense enemies has made me feel much more secure in my travels through the dungeon. My earlier sensory weakness has been well and truly overcome by now. Flicking through the menu, I can see that there are some upgrades to the infrared advancement that make it more sensitive or effective at a greater range, but I'm not particularly interested in that. Some of the other options are far more delicious, and I want to come back to some of those this time. Precognitive antennae, being able to sense a moment into the future. That is just a straight up hack. With multiple upgrades, I might be able to push the time I can detect into the future further and further. Now that ability to sense opponents is so high, and it's time to continue to build on my ability to defeat them. Do you wish to purchase this upgrade? It will cost 27 biomass. Yas. Oh right. Snazzyfazzle. Why damn it. 5 minutes of agonized flailing later we are ready to roll. The others have made their purchases, and the decided lack of reaction to the irritating side effect of having your body rearrange itself at the cellular level is starting to get me irritated. Not much I can do about it. Before we leave, I gather the crew for a brief war conference. All right everyone, how do we feel about our attack on the Crocs so far? These beasts lack the proper respect for you master. Chrysalis pouts. Tasty, tiny grunts. Those tails are delicious. Vibrant cheers. Thanks everyone, that's super useful. Let's go. In short order, I get everyone lined up and ready to advance. Once more we step out of the narrow, glowing tunnels and into the comparatively broad skies of the expanse. This time I make sure to instruct Tiny not to charge forward recklessly and wait for my order. He wasn't happy, but he's just gonna have to build a bridge and get over it. Immediately I can see that there are fewer Crocs on this side of the expanse than before. Where before they were clustered quite thickly around this entrance, there isn't any sign of them now. It almost feels as if they've withdrawn to prevent further losses. Maybe we'll find them deeper into the marsh. Content not to have to worry about the stupid lizards. For the time being, I get the gang moving, and we step forward. In this way, we progress a little further into the marsh. The vegetation and flora are a little more active this time. Perhaps the thinner numbers of Crocs have encouraged them to come out of their shells a little. The ever-present aura of intimidation still hangs thickly in the air, but the marsh is starting to show a few small signs of life. Tiny, for one, gets instantly spellbound by the mind-bending flowers, and I have to try and hold him back while Vibrant rushes forward to mow the offending plant. Having warned Tiny away from the pretty flowers, we continue to creep gradually in until we make it to roughly the 400-meter mark. The vegetation is so damn thick. Trees, hanging vines, flowers the size of cars and rolling humps of mossy earth rising high, that visibility is incredibly weak. It's hard to know if we are coming or going sometimes. As the soft sounds of the marsh ring through the air around us, I try to watch in all directions at once, wary for any traps or ambushes that may come our way. As I creep along behind Tiny, Chrysalis riding on my back, I suddenly feel a strange sensation tickling down my antennae. It feels so weird I freeze in place momentarily, entirely unable to process what my brain is telling me. Chomp.